Alrighty. Sorry about that. I had to go wet down my hair. It was looking wild. Alright, it's 2024. It's Pavlovich Workshop. Got my mic working? Yeah. Got chat up? Okay. So, where we left off was, let me start opening some files here. So, we did Walton Goggins, and there's a couple things right off the top that I want to cover. One of the things I forgot about, and then the other thing I need to go into more detail on, apparently. So let's do that. Cooper is this guy here. So here's all my head reference for Walton Goggins. And I got mostly for Fallout, then a little bit from the internet. And then we threw that last time. If you want to follow along, I guess this is probably a good enough place to do that. So here on this channel, we're doing my Pavlovich Workshop, and then it's also my YouTube channel here, sculpting a likeness of Walton Goggins, and then we're going to go ahead and turn him into the Ghoul today, along with all his other stuff. Hey, Kunal, how's it going? And in order to do that, I need to open up some files. So let's go in here. Fallout, Cooper, model, Cooper. You know what? Let's start off where we left off. New skin. You know what? There's also another thing I could do. No, we'll do this. Model, we'll start with this. Go to body and suit. So we'll open this up. Can you tell me how much gap there should be between the eyes? I'm always confused. Yeah, we can go into that. Well, I mean, how much should be between the eyes and how much is it in between the eyes is kind of up to the person. So if we go over here, geometry, let's say subtool, and we're going to say all high, so everything's turned up. So one thing you're going to notice is in this file right here, we have the suit all as one subtool. That's something we didn't have in the previous one, so I'm going to cover that. You can see we can go down to subdivision level 1. It's just a ZRemesh suit with all of those details projected on here. So here's all those details. Now, one of the details we didn't cover is this ribbing right here. So I'm going to actually open, we got two versions of this file. Recording, Fallout, Cooper, model, high and low. There we go. This ought to be it. So, to get that ribbing, let's talk about that real quick. And also, again, from last time, while I was modeling this, I modeled all this separate. It's a lot easier for me to go in here and have all of this intricate paneling and belts and stuff like this if everything is not part of the same subtool. So let's go ahead and hold down Shift, turn off this little paintbrush icon so we can turn off our polypaint here. Again, subtool all high. So everything is the highest subdivision level. It's at Control N to clear our canvas. And here we go. So this is basically where we left off. Okay, good. Sorry about that. So here, for example, is all of these panels here, and we talked about how to create those. The one thing we didn't talk about is this. So while we're working on our kind of rough draft, what I can do is I can go over here and I can say, or our sculpt here, which we don't really have, but we had a sculpt and we had just kind of a rough area here that looks something like this. It was just like a volume, right? That's just sat there. And in fact, it was probably even a Dynamesh. There was just nothing to it. There we go. It was something like this. Let's go ahead and inflate it just a little bit. Sorry, we're working at a large scale. And a little bit lower. Okay, so we've got a volume block out of some area in the body that we want to convert to something else. Something like this. There would just be, sorry, we're having to slap dash this together here. So we got a blob in the middle here that we want to turn into our little ribbed area here. One thing you can do, so instead of going to the move brush and like going to the side and looking up here, you can hold down Alt and that'll push along that surface normal. So we've got his body underneath this blob and we need to turn this blob Number one, we need to get this blob out over his body, but underneath this other area. So I'm using Alt with Move Brush to kind of push along that surface normal. So I can quickly kind of get that dialed in without having to move my camera to the side and kind of, you know, do that. I can just hold down Alt and push this back and then kind of pull it, push and pull it. So here's these areas here. And again, it's just volumes. I'm not worried about details or anything, or going through here and being like, okay, let me get my Damien standard brush and do this a bunch of times. All I really need to know is this is where this area is, and I can get that detail through ZModeler. So in order to do that, we need to go ahead and make our selection. So if I know it's gonna be underneath all this stuff, I can just mask across here. Now, because this blob is so thin, I might go in here to auto masking. Hold down Control while I'm doing this and turn on backface masks. That way, when I'm masking, it's not going to go through. It's just going to grab that top layer here. So again, all through here is going to be where I want. And I'm doing it on the real model. On the model that I did, I didn't go all the way across and then all the way down, which honestly I probably should have done. It'll save me a little bit of heartache in the future. Hopefully, like the title implies, we're making the Ghoul today, unless I mess that up. So here's my selection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control-W to make that its own polygroup, Control-Shift-Tab to isolate it, Geometry Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. And now I need to get those, the geometry in order to kind of go through and extrude edges. Right now, the geometry is Dynamesh, and you know, it gets all triangulated over here. So one easy way to do that. Also, this alias on the side is going to get built in. I really don't care. There's no details to save over here. So I'm going to go down here to deformation. We're going to do a polish by feature open circle and just kind of tap that a few times, and that'll smooth everything out. So I'm going to go ahead and keep line on. I'm going to ZRemesh half, adapt to size down to 0, and hit ZRemesher. For everybody not using my custom menu, which you shouldn't be doing, you should be using your own custom menu. If you want to know more about ZBrush, if you scroll down here, you're going to see ZBrush What's New playlist, and then right here is Intro to ZBrush, so you can check that out. That'll give you, in fact, in that intro to ZBrush video here, if we do Control F in this playlist and go custom, there is custom brushes explanation, and then also custom interface and menus video 42-ish. So check that out. So for example, y'all would go to Geometry ZRemesher, and it's all right here. So half, keep groups we can have on, but we don't really need them right now. And I'm just going to keep doing that for now. So ZRemesh half. You don't have to do half. You can turn off half, and you can say target polygon count of like 6 or something, and then hit that button, and then it'll just basically give you nice even quads. Now, at this point, what I am going to start doing, because I do want the general direction of the geometry to be kind of specific, I'm going to hold down Control-Shift, and you can go through here with your slice curve, and you can say, hey, go ahead and make sure you put in lines through here that kind of follow, not kind of, it will absolutely follow these lines I'm putting in here. I'm not spacing them out the correct way. I kind of just want to use these as just general guides. So, and again, I'm moving a little bit fast, you know, take your time and do it right, but basically put some guides in here. So now when I do ZRemesh half, I can say, look at my, I want to keep my groups and smooth groups down to 0 because they're already smooth. I've already sliced through this. So ZRemesh, there's no aliasing going on. So I can see a ZRemesh half, half, half. You're going to see it's now going straight across here, and I'm starting to get geometry dialed in. Adaptive size down to 0, so we're also getting nice even quads. And I think that's it. So at some point too, another thing that you can do, what did I do here? I also went through here and did a deformation, polish by feature, open circle. If I keep tapping that, that's going to smooth this out. And also keep these things straight across. And also, I want these things to come to corners because, again, more than anything, so I'm going to use my move brush with curve, AccuCurve turned on. So I can go down here and I can just kind of pull this to a corner up here and kind of pull this to a corner up here. Because, again, at the end of the day, I want all my geometry to be straight across and down first and foremost, and then I can kind of wiggle it into position. So, so again, ZRemesh half, while I'm doing this here, if it's going to do it. And in fact, let's hit Control W. It looks like it's not letting me go. Oh wait, I don't have half selected. Duh. There we go. Here's another tip. If you don't want to use the whole, slice across and keep your polygroups, one thing you can do is you can go through here and you can say extrude polygroup all. I'm going to pull this backwards and then do a display properties flip. And then on these top edges here, I'm going to go down here to, I'm sorry, not down here. Oh yeah, I guess it's down here. Polygroups, group by normals. That's going to put a polygroup on all my major edges here, including this one, which it should do. There we go. So now when I do this, and I do again, a deformation polish by feature. A feature is a polygroup border, so that I can go through here, I can just tap this, and that's going to keep this nice and crispy and smooth this out. So when I keep going through here and doing ZRemesh or half by keep groups, basically it's keeping everything nice and straight. So now I can go through here and say, okay, here's my nice straight lines. Now, is it on his body perfectly? No, but at least my lines are straight, and now I can go through here and I can say with my move brush, holding down Alt, I can go through here. Sorry. Go through here, hold down Alt, and I can push along that surface normal, or pull along that surface normal rather. So I've got nice straight geometry. I'm pulling this back out, and now when I go through here, I can basically go along here with my ZModeler brush, and I can do an extrude face, edge loop complete, extrude edge face. So ZModeler brush, B, Z, M, hover over an edge, hold down spacebar, choose extrude edge face, edge loop complete, and then we can just click and drag here, and that will make, let's make sure we, there we go. We'll get that top one here, and then I just go through here and tap, 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 all the way down, tap, 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 tap. And eventually, there we go, you'll get all the way done, and then we hit D for dynamic. That's going to turn on your geometry dynamic subdivision. You can also go in here to your crease menu and say crease PG. Everywhere you have a poly group, it'll go ahead and crease, crease PG, and then hit D again. There we go. And then we could say, crease level of maybe 2 along with smooth subdiv of 3. And that'll be kind of a preview of what this would look like smooth. Now, if you say, oh, this is way too big, well, all you got to do is we'll go ahead and undo this. We can go through here. We can say, again, crease PG. We can hit Control D to subdivide. Go in here and say delete lower. I always like to go in here with an insert, single edge loop, hold down Alt with my ZModeler brush, get rid of that line down the side. And now I can go through here and say, again, switch this back to extrude face, and then just tap, tap, tap. Or, if it's too much or too big, you can just go back in here and pull to get that the right amount, and then go through here. And the reason I'm tapping is because it's going to save the exact same settings, so I don't have to go in there and measure it every time. It'll just go through and extrude. If you're having problems where it's like, hey, I don't want to do any face actions, hover over a face, say do nothing. Hover over a point, say do nothing. So now it'll only do edge actions, go a little bit faster. So again, crease PG, hit D for dynamic, crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3, and there we go. We've got that paneling built in. Granted, you could do this in the texture. You would just make a material ID right here, and then you would do your UVs, and then you would just tile a texture, just make sure these are all facing in the same direction. But that's how I did this kind of panel. Sorry. There we go. So again, holding down Alt with my move brush, I can go through here and just kind of push and pull along that surface normal and get this all fitted in there. Makes sense. Yeah, eyelids are a pain, aren't they? I have a thing on here, I think, or maybe that's just in my, oh, I think I do. Eyelid. How I kind of do eyelids is using blocking out eyelids teeth ZRemesh. This goes through using the 2 sphere methods with the knife brush. You can check that out if you'd like. And in fact, usually in here, I will call out eyelids 1740. Boom. Yeah. So we'll go ahead and say share, start at, copy. There is the eyelids walkthrough. Reference of facial expressions along with anatomy. Yeah, I think so. Let me see if I've got some on my bookshelf here. I got some new books, so this isn't going to be completely updated. Let's see here. Facial expressions, the artist's complete guide to facial expressions. Another thing, I mean, this is something we've done too in the past, and we'll touch on. If you go to YouTube here, and we go to, if we scroll down, you're going to see there's this character creator face tools pipeline thing. And in there, we do talk about facial expressions. So one thing I'll use, for example, oh boy, character creator, facial profile, nope, face tool, pav face, that's me, expression reference, that's also me. There we go. So I went through and it recorded my face. So for example, if I want to know, wrinkle sets, those are, let's see, mouth smile. That's a nice one. Hopefully it won't gross you all out too much. So here's me smiling, all angles of my face, and then I can watch it as my face moves. I can also sit here and I can pause it and, you know, get all the different angles. And it's fairly high resolution too. If I go in here to video, turn off always fit, this is recorded in 4K. So there's my big old face with all my wrinkles and pores and stuff moving around. So this is a good way to kind of go through here and look at all the little cool things that happen with your muscles and your fat and your skin. So if you don't have reference, create some if you can. Even if you just have a webcam or something, if you can record it, that'll help a lot. Use your own face. Expressions to Cooper. Yeah, well, no. Yes, in the sense that, yes, he does have expressions and custom expression wrinkles. No, in the sense that I don't know that we'll actually do it in this video, but I've got a whole playlist right here that you can check out that will talk about sculpting expressions and custom expression wrinkles. So now, we've talked about Cooper. We've got an awesome Cooper going. I'm going to alt-tap his face here, and in fact, I'm going to drop him down. I didn't actually end up using all of this 60 million polygons, so we're going to say delete higher. So now, let's also talk about likenesses. So what I did discuss is when we went in here, first of all, collect your reference, right? Here's all of his head reference, and I've also got and this is also expression wrinkles too. So going through here with brow raise, I went through all my reference and looked for where those wrinkles show up and actually added those wrinkles to his face so that when his brow raise goes up, those wrinkles will come in. So maybe we will touch on that a little bit. But anyway, get your reference all laid out, and then you go in here to texture import, and let's see, recording, Fallout Cooper, reference, Cooper head. So for example, I go to texture import. I'm like, okay, I'm going to match one of these head references. We're going to double click this one, texture, select it, add to spotlight. You can move this up and down. You can, or make it bigger or smaller, make the opacity more or less. Go in here to perspective, go in here to draw. You make sure that universal is on, it should be on. You can change your focal length. So now all we're having to do is go through here and match. So to answer the original question, how far apart should the eyes be? Well, however far apart your reference dictates. Some people have very close set eyes. Some people have very eyes that are far apart. It's all part of the wonderful things that make us all different and unique and awesome. Now, and then you basically go through and you line this up. What I prefer to use is a plugin called RefSwitcher. So definitely check out RefSwitcher. It's awesome. I can go through here and turn on, Cooper 02. You can save views, and then now we've got this view lined up. We can save over that. There we go. So now when I switch through all these views, and they're all slightly up a little bit because I was going through around mucking things. So we're going to save this view. We're going to load this view here. There we go. Save view 3. And then for view 4, There we go. There's the 3/4 view. So you want like a good profile, you want a good front, you want a good 3/4 or whatever. And you basically, now I can go through here with my hotkeys, Alt-1, Alt-2, Alt-3, Alt-4. Again, set them up to however you want. And now these all match. Now, and that's basically where I left it off. So if you wanted to sculpt a likeness and you're starting from a sphere, well, then go for it. I'm not going to tell you to not use a sphere. That's, you know, a lot of artists are like, well, if I don't make it from a sphere, it's cheating. I hate to break this to you. You go back in time far enough, it's always cheating. Michelangelo thought oil painters were cheaters, right? Because they weren't doing things, you know, fresco or whatever. Or photography is cheating, or Photoshop is cheating because it's not acrylics on a panel that gets, you know, all the reasons why your version of art is cheating over somebody else's version of art. So whatever makes you feel better about being an artist, start that way. For example, going through here and, you know, using a Dynamesh sphere and then sculpting a face. There you go. That's a good start. Now, actually, the mouth. There we go. And then also the cheeks. Put little cheeks in here, maybe a little chin, little nose. All right, now we're stuck. Little brow, ears. Whee. There you go. There's your face. And then if you want to match it to whatever, we go Alt-1. Of course, this isn't really set up to match, but I'll go ahead and hit F, and we'll go through here and we'll line up our facial features. So here's where our eyes and nose and mouth go. I'm going to say. I'm not going to save overview 1, but I can go through here and now I can move my features around to match the face. So that's fairly obvious, right? So we can go through here. Now, if I use my Damien Standard brush, I do want to make sure that underneath my brush samples, if you have spotlight projection on, it'll allow you to sculpt underneath or off. If you have spotlight projection on and you're over here, it's not going to let you sculpt. You have to be over the image to sculpt. I'm not trying to sculpt the image through this because you can, you know, paint and sculpt an image through that. So I'm going to turn spotlight projection off temporarily. So now I've got my features lined up. I can go through here and I can kind of carve in, hold down Alt, and I've got his lips on here. And then this is where his nostrils are. And then use a little bit of clay brush or clay buildup or whatever. And now I'm going through here and matching his face. Does it look great? No, but this is the start of it, right? At least I know I have, from this view, I have these landmarks, but then the human face is in the round. So you got to go, okay, well, that doesn't quite look right, you know? So the mouth has to kind of come out. So, you know, you'll have reference for that, and you'll kind of pull this chin out, and you'll pull this nose out, and you'll do this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth while you're also matching, you know, other views, your 3/4, your front, your side, your profile, all that stuff. So that's how you match reference. Now, granted, we started with a, what's it called? A base mesh. Because I wanted, for example, this free character bases right here will walk you through how to download a free base mesh and then hook up your facial animation stuff if you want. If you want to start with a base mesh in ZBrush, just hit the comma key. We'll go in here to the male ZPR. We'll drop it down to subdivision level 1, delete higher. We'll say... drag and drop the model again, edit mode, Alt-1, F. Okay, so I've got a default base face, right? And then I can go through here and I can match this up. And then we can say, what we're going to do? Not brush, Z plugin. We'll say save view 1, and then we'll switch over to view 2. And we'll match this up, and all I'm doing is just rotating, move scaling and rotating this around. We'll say save view 2, etc., etc. And then when you go through here and you're moving stuff around, hey, that nose doesn't quite line up. So we'll hit Z, we'll move this over by grabbing this orange thing here, and we're going to go, okay, does that look right? No? Okay, well then go and move it. Now, that's not necessarily... depending on how exact your camera setup is, and if you're over here and you actually end up knowing, you know, what focal length the photographer was using or whatever, it might go a little bit faster and easier. but at the end of the day, you're just trying to make good decisions. So you're going to go through here and you're going to move this stuff around, and then you're going to go back out here and you're going to go, okay, does this look right from this view? Does it look right from this view? Well, how do I know? Well, load up another view of his face. Again, none of these are lined up because we're starting from scratch here, but go through here, line up all of these things as best you can, and don't take it as gospel. Don't take it as like, oh, from this point of view, you know, oh, this ear has to be this big. Sometimes the focal length, sometimes tricky things can happen with perspective that aren't exactly right, or sometimes it's hard to get this thing rotated exactly right. In fact, if you hold down shift and start rotating and let go of shift, you can rotate on the camera plane here from wherever the last place is you touched your mesh, so you can line up that way as well. So get it lined up as best you can. Go through here, move this over. You know, you can turn this up and down. It's like, oh, his nose is actually pushed in quite a bit. From the front view, it looks correct. From the 3/4 view, it's out too far. He's got kind of a stubby nose, so we're going to move this back. And then you just keep doing that. I also have a Cooper 01. Oops, that's a Ghoul. Cooper 02, Cooper O. Cooper. There it is. There we go. So I've got these loaded up too. So we've got a bunch of front. Here's a nice profile shot. So these are really important to get the forehead lined in, the ear position, the mouth position, and also left and right sides of the head are a little bit different. His right ear is a little bit higher than his left ear, or vice versa. I forget which. But basically, you're going to go through there. You're going to swap these out, and you're going to painstakingly move your polygons around little by little. You're also, and you know what? Let's, since these are all lined up, so get this base male to a point, right? Let's see, recording Cooper model, body and suit. That's character creator, sorry. There we go. Fallout Cooper, here, Cooper new skin, body, face tools, high. Load this back in. So that's the basics of it. And again, I didn't go into a bunch of super detail because it's not super exciting to watch, at least in my point of view. Let's see, Alt-1, turn off solo mode, select his head here. Yeah, everything's just a little bit off, and I am going to say 6, delete higher. There we go. Solo mode. Polypane off. Green metallic. Okay, so for example, I'll go ahead and say save view 1, go to Alt-2, Alt-3, let's skip that one, Alt-4, there we go. Okay, so also being cognizant of the fact that, like, you know, just make as good a decision as you can as far as like the draft of the face, how far the eyeballs go back, how far the brow comes out. You know, you can match it exactly, but if it ends up being a little off from another view, hit Shift Z to turn it off and go and look at it, you know, and go and see. And in fact, you're probably working at like subdivision level. Honestly, I spend most of my time in subdivision level 2. Yeah, subdivision level 2 is where I spend most of my hours. And then once I get these volumes at this resolution dialed in, then it's just, you know, doing a little bit of finesse work, and then going back up here and then applying scan data basically for the poor detail. Another thing you're looking for example, if we go back to Alt-1, another thing I like to do is I'll move this reference over to the side, and then I'll move this over, and I'll actually grab, sorry. I'll go Alt-1, here's my reference. Now if I want to sculpt, I can hit Shift-Z and I can turn it off and I can sculpt, or I can hit Z and sculpt while, you know, this is kind of sitting here. So if I want to move stuff around, sometimes though, I want to max out this and then scoot it over and then scoot this over. I'm going to put a dot in my timeline. So movie timeline show. And then now, if I move my camera around, I can use my arrow keys to snap it back. So I've got my reference sitting here, I've got this sitting here, and I can go through here and I can move, I can sculpt, etc. So what I'm looking for is when you look at lighting, you'll switch this over to like a basic material or a basic material 02. You're going to go in here to your light And then the reason I'm using a basic material is the lighting is built in to your matte cap material. So I'm using an actual light. So I can go through here and I can move this light around. You can go in here too. And this is all stuff I've covered last time. But while I'm here, you can change the amount of diffuse that comes through, the amount of specularity. You can kind of match that up a little bit. You can change the specular curve a little bit to kind of match your reference. So this will help you kind of match some of these things. And what you're looking for is these kind of cues. Like right here, you see that little bump right here, and this line right here, and this, all the bumps and lines that make up the face when light hits a volume and it causes shapes to show up. That's really all you're matching. And again, you're probably at this level of subdivision, maybe subdivision level 3 for some of these shapes, but most of it for the big volumes, primary volume, subdivision level 2 is all you'll need. Subdivision level 3 for a little more detail, and anything past that is, you know, really, really detailed stuff. So yeah, just keep doing that. So we'll say Alt 2. Yep. And then same thing here. And you're just looking for cues. You can go through here. You can match the lighting if you're so inclined, and you're just looking for little bumps and making sure everything matches. And then when it's all lined up too. And again, you're also trying to make good decisions where, you know, you may look at this and go like, oh, all my features are off on this one. Well, let me move his mouth down. Let me move his nose around. It's like, well, if this model matches your other reference pretty well, and this is the only one that's off, instead of saying, oh, let me move everything around to match this one photograph, instead go, you know what? Maybe this photograph is a little off. Maybe my draw, my focal length is a little bit off. I'm going to ignore, you know, the relative positioning of all these features on the face for this one photograph, and I'm just going to use this as a sanity check for like maybe the curvature of the ear, you know. So I'll kind of ignore the eye placement and mouth placement, and I'll just use this because all my other photographs, the ear's pretty well lined up. This is the only one where it's not. Well, then maybe I'll go in here and be like, you know what, this one needs to be pulled back just a little bit. Or I'll get a consensus, and I'll go look at my reference in here and go, well, let me take a look at that left ear over time, and I'll gather all my left ear reference, and I'll be like, yeah, that does have a little swing. It goes way in, then way out again. And then from this view, you don't really see that because, you know, you've turned the head. So you'll turn the head here, and you'll be like, okay, yeah, that's looking about right. Okay, gotcha. And that is the magic or lack thereof of, at least for me, dialing it in a likeness. I find it not necessarily difficult, just tedious. And I think you'll find the same. I don't think it's rocket science necessarily. I mean, there is definitely an art and a science to it. I'm not saying I'm the best person to walk you through a likeness necessarily, but that's the basics of it. So hopefully that makes more sense than last time. Okay, let me get caught up here. Yes. Skin folds really hard on face to give. Yeah. I suppose everything's hard to do, but really it's just using your observational skills to look at something and then recreate it with polygons, using all of these brushes available to you, and you're just basically moving polygons around. Now, having said all that, let's start with, now we're going to make the ghoul, right? So, as a surprise to no one at this point, if we go in here, oh, we were going to talk about the bodysuit. Because I know it's going to come up high and low. So, for example, I have, remember how I was saying when I created the bodysuit, before we go into the ghoul likeness, which is taking Cooper's face and then turning him into the ghoul. If I go through here and we look at this body suit here, and we say all high. There it is. So it's a lot easier to sculpt on these things as separate components, right? But if for whatever reason I'm like, you know, I want all of this bodysuit. So number one, I'm going to get rid of all the head stuff here. So we're going to say CC base body. So again, I brought in all the character creator stuff. So I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff here. And I want to, well, and actually all the accessories too. Zippers and lapel pins and the little back device. Clips. And then the ribbing we're all going to keep here. Okay. And the wire we're going to turn off. And you know what? The boots are going to be separate too. So basically, here's all the pieces I want to be one piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, with everything visible, I'm going to go down here and say merge visible. And in fact, when it merged, it kept my subdivision history, which is kind of nice. Not all of it, because it all has to be the exact same subdivision history in order for that to work, but most of it. Now, I don't really care about this. This is just to kind of show you what it did. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here. I don't want any subdivision, so I'm going to say delete lower. I'm going to turn on X symmetry by tapping X on my keyboard. BI brush insert. IMM primitives. Hit M on my keyboard so I can grab a cylinder, drag it out, and I'm going to basically cap this off, because I'm going to use this as a blocker or a filler, because what I'm basically doing is getting an envelope for a new mesh that I'm going to project all this detail to. So I'm going to go through here, and I'm going to scooch this around to kind of cap this off. The arms should already be capped. The bottom of the legs aren't capped, so we'll go ahead and do that again. Another thing too, instead of just capping, you can also go in here to your move brush, turn on brush, auto masking, backface masking. You're going to see I have that out here in my custom interface here. So for any brush that I have, for example, move brush, I can just hit Alt F and toggle that on. I don't even need to see this open. I can just toggle that on and I can see a little visual indicator. The reason I'm doing that is I can go through here, and when I have that turned on, if I use the move brush and I just start moving, it's only going to move things in that one direction. It's going to leave the other side alone. Not great in this case, but just in case that's useful to you, you can do that. So again, go through here and turn off this. Forgot, and we'll turn this off. So long story short, go through here, cap all your surfaces off, make it look nice, because what I'm going to do is we're going to go through and geometry, Dynamesh. We're going to just make an envelope. So we're going to say Dynamesh resolution. We're going to drag from the resolution slider onto our mesh. It'll pick the right resolution for us. I'll turn blur down to 0, and we'll just hit Dynamesh. And in fact, I don't even need it this high. I can drop this down even lower, and I can Dynamesh this together. And what this is doing is creating, again, an envelope for me. And if you have any holes in here, you're going to have to go through here, and I'm going to use the inflate brush to kind of inflate those together. You can also use another IMM brush to kind of spackle that shut if you want to. But again, we're just going through here, and we're just generating an envelope with no holes on the feet. And if you want to, you can hold down Control Shift and switch this out to knife curve. I'm going to hit Control W to make this all one poly group. And then we're going to go here, we're going to slice this off, and we're going to slice this end off here, and we can make a poly group for the inside of that. Doesn't really matter. But now we have an envelope that is a mesh. I can hold down Control Shift and I can isolate, you know, again, go through here and, you know, mask this out, make its own poly group if you want to. You can also go through here and you can hold down Control Shift and slice, just like when we were ZRemeshing this. You can put in little guides by going through here and saying Control Shift slice, and it's like, okay, I want to slice through here, I want to slice through this glove, or go through here and mask it and slice it out nicely. Wherever you want the ZRemesher line to go onto, you can do that. Spend as much or as little time doing that as you want. In fact, I'll go ahead and isolate this poly group here. Control Shift Tap, geometry, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, and then you can just hit ZRemesh. Adaptive size down. If you go down to 0, it may not build in some of this extra wrinkle detail, so maybe I'll drop the adaptive size down to like 17 or so it builds some of that in. Keep groups if you have them. Smooth groups down to 0 if we've already smoothed out those edges for the polygroup borders, and then just hit ZRemesher. In this case, we're not going half, we're going down to target polygon count of 5. That's going to go through and rebuild this geometry to be nice looking, basically. I'm going to skip ahead just so we can talk about this a little bit cleaner. Go Z, body, and suit. Actually, yeah, we can do this. Okay, good. It's all coming together. So again, all high. So now what I would do is essentially, let's say this is the merged version of my high res. I'm going to, you know, with all my wrinkles and details, but it's all separate pieces, right? I'm going to hold down Control and tap the latest point in history for this subtool. If it's hard to see, go in here to Edit, Delete Older, Undo History, and then Control tap the only bar you have in here. That's your Undo History bar. That's going to store those vert positions. And then I'm going to go to my ZRemeshed version here, which here we are. Let's say this is our ZRemesh version. Everything's nice. We have, you know, edge loops built in for the wrists and here, and then we have this all built in. So this is our ZRemeshed high res that we created. Sometimes it won't build in these wrinkles very nicely. In this case, I didn't care that much, but if you do, what I'll usually do is I'll say, I'll hit clone here, and then I'll have my high res available sitting here. And then on that clone, I'm going to say append a ZSphere. So we've got our high res, we've got a ZSphere. With that ZSphere selected, I'm going to go down here to topology. I'm going to select is that my subdivision level 1? Oh, I'm over the limit. I can always merge things together, so not a huge deal. So we can say split hidden. So we've got a top and a bottom. We can stitch them up later. So I'm going to go down here. We're going to say topology, select topology, the top part here. And now I'm going to say go down here to a medium gray. We're going to switch over to matte cap white. And now if there's any areas, and again, I put in plenty of resolution so the wrinkles weren't an issue, but if you did have some areas where it's like, oh, I wish this could be better, that's all you have to do. Clone off your model, make a Z-sphere, put this geometry back in here. You have your high res showing, you have your low res showing basically, and then you can just go through here and say, let's hold down hit Q to go into draw mode. You can hold down Alt, oops, Z-sphere selected, go down here to topology, edit topology. Then we can go through here, we can hold down Alt and we can tap to delete, and then you can just go in here and just tap on here, and you can go in here and redraw your geometry to match the wrinkles. And you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and you know, kind of close this up, whatever you want to do. And then when you're done, you can go out of edit topology, and you can say adapt to skin. You can hit A or just hit preview. One thing you're going to want to do is turn your density down to 1, Dynamesh down to resolution down to 0. So when you hit preview, you're just getting your polygons here. And then you can say make adaptive skin. That will shoot out a skin Z-sphere of your geometry. And then you can do that for the pants. If we go down here to append, oops. If you did the pants separately, and we want to append those pants that we worked on, now we've got the body and the pants. Just when you merge these down, make sure you go down here to merge, have weld turned on, and then that'll merge and weld the points. Or you can just merge this down, say merge down, merge these together, and then I'll go through here and do a geometry modify topology. Let's do it here. Geometry. Modify topology. There's a weld points in here. You can just hit weld points, and then when you go through here and you hold down shift to smooth, all of those points that are overlapping will be welded together. So you've got this all nice and rebuilt. And then, so you can say delete that. So here's our suit high res. And again, this can be all separate pieces. Doesn't really matter. Just control tap that point in history to store those vert positions. And then when you have your low res here, and it'll probably look more something like this. It'll look like this. It's like, hey, where'd all my details go? That's where you can start snapping your details back. We stored those vert positions from our high res, so we're going to go down here to project. Up here, Subtool, Project History. You can have color turned on or off if you want. I'm just going to do geometry, but you can do both. Project History. Getting our details back, we're going to hit Control D to subdivide. Project History. Control D to subdivide. Project History. Control D to subdivide. Project history. So now what you have is you have one contiguous mesh. You're getting your projected history from all those separate subtools onto one subtool. If you have any errors in here, like this is actually working really well, but occasionally you'll get something like, I don't know, it'll look like this, or it'll look like this, or something didn't quite get. BHR to history project history recall brush. And then you can just go through here. It's camera based, so make sure you're looking straight down at your object so you don't get any skewed geometry. You can hold down Shift to smooth, and then again, you're just going through here and fixing any errors by projecting with the history recall brush. Go through and do that, and now we have a ZRemeshed single contiguous mesh that has our projected history from our multiple subtools projected on it, and there you go. Now, and also, if you have this, you can now go in here to, for example, Z plugin, UV master. It's not symmetrical. If you do have polygroups, you can keep them on. You can say unwrap. Oops, sorry. We have multiple subdivision history, so we had to go in here to work on clone, unwrap. If I hit flatten, that'll show your UVs. Of course, use your polygroups to your advantage. If you want to go through here and say, you know what, I want this be a polygroup, and I want this to be a polygroup, just hit Control W, oops, etc., etc. So now when I have polygroups turned on and I do unwrap, and we hit flatten, there we go. Now, if I do unflatten, I do check seams. Luckily, all the seams kind of went on the inside border. If you want to show if you want to have this seam go exactly where you want, which you can do. If you like these UVs, you can hit copy UVs and then go back to your non-clone version. So just go back to your regular suit here and say paste UVs. So now this one has UVs. If we go down here and say UV map, morph UV. In fact, if you want to sculpt or paint in this view, you can. This is all on the ZBrush What's New stuff. You can go and check that out. So let me actually show you where that is. For example, on my YouTube channel or my ArtStation page, if you scroll down, or we go into ZBrush What's New, you can scroll down, and that was a ZBrush 2020 What's New. You can go in here and you can look at these 41 videos. There's some extra special goodies in here on some of them. So you can go through there and you can check out, like, hey, painting a face, a flattened face, or painting fabric onto a flattened object. All of that's right here. So you can check that out. And again, that's in there's a ZBrush What's New, Real Vision, Character Creator, live streams, presentations, and then all on that page there. Cool. Okay, so that's how we, oh, here's another thing too. So if we go down here to subdivision level 1, and you want to put those seams exactly where you want, that's where the create unwrap, I'm going to go ahead and say crease my current seams, and that's going to put a crease where my current seams are. And then if you want to go through here and build in your own seam, you can say, you can do auto seams, or you can just say, hey, I want to use creased edges with symmetry. In this case, we don't have symmetry. And then if I'm going to go through here and do creases, I'm going to use my ZModeler brush, BZM. I'm going to hover over a point, and we're going to switch this to crease shortest path. And then also hover over edge, and we're going to say crease edge. You know what? I think we're going to stick the point. Crease shortest path. And then I can go through here. And we can choose where we want our UV seam to go. So I can click this point, or click this point way over here, and it'll go through and choose the shortest path. So you can go through and just click through, and wherever you're leaving a crease line behind is where it's going to cut in a UV seam. If you want to start over, just tap spacebar, and then you can click that point there, and then continue clicking around your object until this is right where you want it. Okay, here. Okay. And then you can go over here and you can say, hit this unwrap button with creased edges selected. It'll go through and so now if we hit turn bump down to 0 morph UV, now that leg will be cut out based on wherever you put that crease seam. So that's how you can use UV master and or the UV map crease seam stuff. Anyway, that's how I did the suit. So now I can point to that if anybody asks. Now let's delete all that and let's go back to our Cooper model, and we'll turn him into the Ghoul real quick. Can we create characters based on the CC-free base meshes still in the marketplace? I think so. Make sure you read the terms and conditions, but I don't think that's a problem. The only thing I don't think you can do is say, hey, here's a base mesh. Now I'm going to turn around and sell these base meshes as is. You can't do that, but if you're creating your own thing, you should be fine. Cloth was a combination of, so yeah, we'll get into cloth a little bit more. I think we talked about this too on the last one, but gosh, do I even have that? Give me a sec. That video sucks. Hold on. I hate Instagram video. Let's go to my page here. I don't have this posted on ArtStation yet, so that's why it's kind of a pain. But for example, here's our guy moving and grooving. All done. So this is basically last live stream. And here we are doing our likeness. Here, wrap scan data we talked about last time. So here you can see me doing the block in, and I'm kind of putting in some, basically the volumes, and then adding in, doing the boots and adding in wrinkles. But you're going to see right here, this is a Marvelous Designer pair of pants and a shirt that I just brought in. And then just like we used the projection history brush to kind of clean up errors, you can also hold down Control and tap and store those vert positions of just a miscellaneous Marvelous Designer shirt and pants, and then project that detail onto your mesh. This is actually a concept mesh, so it's kind of a working mesh, but I'm getting my primary and secondary wrinkles from that from the Marvelous Designer onto my mesh. I'm kind of doing a mix of, here's Marvelous Designer wrinkles. Well, I don't want a shirt, button-up shirt and pants and stuff. I just want the wrinkles. Here's my mesh. Here's my wrinkles. History project brush. I put those wrinkles onto my mesh, and then I can use that a little bit neater in doing it, putting the wrinkles where I want it, basically. So there's the final result. And then there's the other final result. You know, here he is walking around. He's got facial expressions and custom wrinkles and stuff from face tools and stuff like that. So he's moving and grooving. So now let's turn him into the Ghoul. Yeah, okay. Hold on, Shift, turn off the paintbrush icon. So just like we were doing before, we're still talking likeness here. So Z plug in RefSwitcher. And we're going to go over here and we'll switch out to Ghoul. Load view 1. So Alt 1. Hey, and this is all lined up. Oh, beautiful. Okay. So just like Cooper or Walton Goggins, we're going through and we're just lining up this face. And again, to the surprise of no one, you're going to want to start off at subdivision level 1 and then work your way up to the details. You don't want to go through here and mess around with poor detail. You want to do primary and secondary volumes first. So really, most of your time is going to probably be spent in subdivision level 1. Not that much. There's not a whole lot you can do with just these polygons. And then subdivision level 2. Another thing you're going to see here is like, well, did I go through and move this ear to match this? Not really. Like, I already spent hours matching Cooper's face. I'm going to assume the Ghoul's face is pretty close, you know, wherever the makeup is. So I just kind of left it. Now, I did take a little bite out of his ear. There's a little notch, you know, where he got shot or something. So I did go through there and, you know, take a little bite out. Now, is that perfect? Well, from this angle, it might be pretty good, but then from another angle, it might be bad. So when you're doing a 2D move in a 3D object, you know, match your 2D reference. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you're going to have to go through here and be like, okay, did I do anything stupid? By doing that 2D move from this view, did I do something obviously wrong from another view. That's the basics of moving polygons to match an object. You know, getting a consensus, and also, and again, like this stuff here and moving the head around. The nose, I shouldn't have a nose here, right? Well, let's get rid of it. Let's hold down Shift and Smooth, and then, you know, again, if I put this back, let's see, Alt 2. If I scoot all this stuff in here, and I'm like, okay, perfect. Here's where my nostril is, and let's hit Z so we can kind of do this. Is this perfect? No, not really, because it's really hard to do anything from just this angle, right? Well, luckily we're in 3D, so I can go to the side here and be like, oh, I really messed it up, actually, more than I intended. So you're kind of methodical. You're kind of going through here and being like, hey, let me start off by going, maybe you want to use a clip brush, Control Shift. This is probably a little heavy-handed, but we can say, I want to kind of clip all this back here. Yeah, it's a little too heavy-handed. So here's the other thing you can do too, is use your brain. I know in the makeup chair, they're going to put a little green, spoiler alert, if you don't know how CG works. They're going to put a little green screen on his nose here or something like that. And this is where, this is all going to get sunken in, right? Well, you can just go in and do that. You don't need to slavishly follow a reference image if you know that that's basically how things are going to work, and then you can just toggle that off and be like, okay, from the nostril here, that's kind of where this is going to be sunken in. And then if you want to, you can also go in here with the mask. You can hold down Control and start painting, Control Tap to invert that, Control Tap to blur that mask out, and then go in here and just kind of push that back. And then keep going through here and sculpting whatever's particular about the ghoul. Go in here and match it with your move brush, and then again, keep getting a consensus, and then making good decisions based on, you know, does it match? You know, use, instead of green metallic, switch over to basic material, change your lighting if you want. Getting all the little bumps and ridges, we'll go through here, and in fact, usually I'll have like X symmetry turned on, kind of, for the primary moving stuff around. And then we'll go through here and we'll kind of dig this back in. So we're kind of exaggerating those cheekbones here. You can see, okay, I did it from that view. Let me go and check it from this view. And I'll go through here and be like, oh, okay, so yeah, this from this view right about here, it kind of digs in, and these things kind of come back, and it looks like there's a little bit of this built in, a zygomatic arch there. We'll switch back here. One. Hey, there we go. These things are starting to line up here, so we'll kind of scooch this through, and there we go. Now we're off to the races. And once you do all of the views for subdivision level 2, then you can bump it up to subdivision level 3 and just keep dialing in a little bit more specifics. Let me see, anything else weird? Makes sense, right? There's nothing too crazy. Oh, and the other thing too is if I want to have this kind of just as reference, I'll max out the opacity again, and I'll scoot this over. I'll hit Z, I'll scoot this over. And in fact, I might even say, you know what, you're taking up too much room. I just want a little bit of reference sitting here. And then again, movie timeline show. I'll put a little dot in here, and then I can just snap back quickly, and I can have this reference sitting here while I go through. And I'm like, okay, this sculpts here, and then this kind of digs in a little bit here, and okay, this matches this, and then this kind of goes in a little bit here, and we turn him into... now we're back to where I want to be. The Ghoul models. Actually got to go by name because I was messing around in here. 6, 7, clothing, clean, clothing. What is this one? Give me a sec. Oh, that's just the body. I was like, I don't know what this file is. Not what I was looking for. Sorry, Walton. Spread for clothing. 6, 7, 8. Okay. think this is correct. These are much lighter weight files, so that's nice. There we go. So now we have our, we've gone through and we've, let me see. Let's go into solo mode here. Alt-1. This one not at a... Huh, I guess not. But anyway, we've gone through here. We've looked at our reference and we've gathered it. Again, expression wrinkles I'm going to have to go through on my channel, I think, because it's more of a Face Tools plugin thing for Character Creator than it is a ZBrush thing. Kind of. But again, like I said before, you can definitely check that out in this whole playlist right here, the Character Creator Pipeline Face Tools. That'll walk you through. And again, these expression wrinkles, the exact same thing. You bring in your ref viewer. I don't know that I had it. I think I just eyeballed it, but you go through here and you dial in your expressions using any reference that you have available, and you can even paint the wrinkles on there and match the forehead wrinkles, etc., etc. So here is the Ghoul. I'm trying to remember if I did anything else. I think it was just clay brush, standard brush, move brush. There was nothing fancy at all. Maybe a little Damien standard, damn standard here to kind of carve in, or damn standard 02, which you can get from the internet, damn standard 02, maddamnart.com, I believe. Going through here and just, you can kind of use this to kind of carve in, you know, little wrinkle details, and then a little standard brush or clay buildup or clay brush to kind of go through there and get these little knobby pieces here. Okay, I'll look at this conversation again. So yes, oh, and this too, these were a little more obvious. So this, most of this clothing here was made in Marvelous and then just kind of cleaned up. Same thing for the trench coat that was started in Marvelous and then just kind of cleaned up in here. Now, things like the shirt, yes. Vest, no. The vest, we'll go through each of these items, but basically that was just a mask and then just sculpted. I didn't, usually like gloves and vests and belts and stuff, I don't usually bother. It's just go through there and just sculpt what I need. But then big, you know, primary and secondary fold things like pants and shirts, I'll have to go through Marvelous either first or as a follow-up to a block out. Another thing too, if you're interested, if we go through here and we say Marvelous, you can also use your geometry and UVs as a pattern in Marvelous. So that might be a cool thing, but here's a bunch of Marvelous Designer stuff you can check out if you're so inclined. Okay. Okay, sorry. Okay, phase. Cloth marble. Can we create character? Yes. Do you think the current situation of all the gaming and VFX industry will improve? It's really hard to survive. I hope so. The alternative doesn't sound great in that we don't. I don't know. It's what usually what I would say is like, hey, you know, every 4 years there's a paradigm shift in this industry, and you know, you become a dinosaur overnight, and that's really scary. But usually there's tools in place that, you know, you get better at this or this workflow or this type of content creation for this type of end result, and it's fine. The difference being, you could argue, is that, well, things like generative AI isn't so, I mean, in some instances it is like, hey, it's adding a tool to my tool belt so I can get things done faster at a higher quality. Also, possibly faster at a higher quality without the need for me to do it, because anybody can pull a slider or type in something and have it spit out something reasonable. And yeah, you don't need to be a professional to do that, right? So that's where it gets a little scarier than I normally would be, I suppose. You have a link for the RefSwitcher. Yeah, no, but I think I can get there. Let's see. RefSwitcher Art Station. Oops. There you go. from our friend Nick. Check that out. Let's see. When do you break symmetry of the likeness? That's a good question. And usually I wait pretty long. I'll usually dial in the profile first and then the front view. And then I'll do a just do a rough first pass on like all the primary volumes. And then I'll bump it up to subdivision level 2, do a pass. And all of this is with symmetry turned on. But I'm noticing while I'm doing that, like, hey, this ear never matches up, or this nose is always off just a little bit, or this mouth, left and right mouth side is always just a little off. I ignore that. I get it close enough. And then at the very end, usually when I hit the subdivision level 3 or higher, that's when I'll go through and I'll be like, okay, this left ear down, right ear up, left side of the mouth down, right side of the mouth up, nose crooked to the left. Same thing with my face. My face isn't perfect and beautiful or anything like that, but it's generally symmetrical. And then once I get to subdivision level 3, that's when I start moving eyes and ears and nose around. And I've also, by the time I've got to that point, I have a pretty good idea of what needs to move. So it's not like, oh, in this picture, I moved the left eye up, and in this picture, I moved the right eye down. And then after doing that enough times, it wasn't really, because that'll end up turning him into like the Toxic Avenger, or there's a guy from the Goonies. You know, features are kind of sliding off the face. Instead of that, what I'll usually do is I'll have a pretty good consensus in my brain where it's like, hey, these features are kind of shifted slightly, and I'll know that this needs to go up this slightly, this needs to go down slightly. So I'm not caught in what can sometimes happen, which is a endless loop of moving one eye too much and then moving the other eye too much to match photo reference, and the next thing you know, he looks like Sloth. Again, and that just goes back to, yeah, use observation and use photo reference as a guide, but you don't have to be a slave to it, because, you know, your focal length may be a little bit off. So just make good decisions. Make good decisions. The end, period. Can you leave the keyboard operations? It wouldn't help you. The way I'm working, I'm using hotkeys. Your hotkeys aren't the same as mine, so when I'm going through here and hitting Alt-A, that's meaningless to you. This is my hotkey for my custom menu. Alt-C is my clay brush. Alt-V is my move acu. If I showed that to you, you would do that on your computer and go, why does my Alt-V not do anything? Because your Alt-V isn't connected to a custom brush setup, blah, 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 blah. Everything I'm doing is custom, so if I'm not calling it out, hotkeys aren't going to help you. It'll just confuse you. Believe it or not. What would you work on the face sculpting with perspective mode turned on? Yes, if I'm matching photographic reference. No, if I'm just kind of working generally, I'll have perspective just turned off. That's just how I roll. Hey, John. I had students model a head based off reference, but they would have the image 20 years apart. Didn't really match up. That's another thing, too, is if you've had work done, makeup, prosthetics, age, all of those things kind of, and luckily this is all, you know, the same guy. I mean, some of these too, like this barely looks like him. Was this a good 3/4 shot to choose? Probably not, but I was able to go, you know what, the curve of the forehead, the major volumes I was looking at weren't going to change that much, I don't think. So I kind of rolled with it, but again, don't have to be slavish to it, you know, use good judgment and just kind of pick and choose what you pull from whatever reference. Got my degree in engineering design. Use ZBrush at all. Everything done in I want to think. Oh, absolutely. Glad the videos help. Yeah, especially if they don't teach ZBrush at all. Then yeah, whatever resources you have available, YouTube. If the Marvelous Designer base mesh is so simple, would it not be easier to just extract a shape from the mesh in ZBrush and just stay in ZBrush? Yes. Yeah, it depends on what you're making. And a lot of that stuff that we're going to get into next is probably just exactly what you said, where it's like if I'm going to make a belt, or hell, even a shirt sometimes, depending on the type of shirt, you may not, you might just be able to stay in ZBrush for sure. Yes. Yeah, shout out to Nick. He's awesome. Want to be a character artist? Started ZBrush 6 months ago. Any advice to get better? This character is the Ghoul from Fallout. Fallout, the TV series. Yeah, let me see. Do I have anything for that on my ArtStation? College degree, 2D, break into the game. I kind of have motivation and inspiration, and then how to break into the games industry. Maybe might have some insight into that, but as far as just getting better, it's the same thing I tell my students in my CG Master Academy class is just keep creating. Here's a bunch of techniques. So basically what I do is we go through, let me see if I can load this up. Class, live QA topics. Nope, class, video list. So on this video list here, we go through a bunch of technique videos, and then they go through and make whatever they want. If they're a weapons artist, or if they're a character artist, or if they're an environment artist, or they're none of the above, they're just learning ZBrush, pick something to make, and then I'll walk through these techniques with them and then try to string together elegant solutions for basically problem solving. These are tools in your tool belt that allow you to get things done. And they might be rusty tools or not very well used tools because you're new to them, but eventually over time you'll have a bunch of tools in your tool belt that you can use for problem solving, much like we're going to do here. We're going to go through and use all the tools we have available in order to kind of quickly and effectively go through and do everything from modeling different bullets in a bandolier to modeling a bandolier to modeling a hat to modeling, you know, a belt buckle with little scripted detail on it, to boots and spurs with detail on it and all that good stuff too. So, and in fact, he kind of cleans up nice if I remember correctly. If we go down here to our subtool visibility. So we have our visibility things up here. So V1, V2 through V8. So V1 is everything. And then you can go over here to V2 and you can go and turn on and off different subtools. So this is basically him without all the extra clothing. Trying to think if there's anything else. And this is the, oh, these need to be turned off. So if I go through here and I turn off the wrist straps for the trench coat, and then go back to V1 and then back to V2, they'll stay off. Yeah, and that's basically, and the exact same thing too. If I go back to my reference here, I've got it all broken up. Basically what I'll do is I'll start with, in a script, they'll call out like extreme close up, medium shot, whatever. I'll kind of break it down like that, my overall reference. So at least I know I have a pool of reference I can go through and look that goes from extreme close up all the way to full body. And then out of that reference, I can quickly go in here and be like, okay, what type of object am I looking at? Bandolier. Well, the bandolier may show up in a close up like this kind of detail here. So I'll kind of look through here, but then also in the medium shot might give me high res enough reference to kind of go through here and get information that I need. And then also full body just to kind of see overall placement and maybe any other cues like, how is this tied? You know, it took me a while to figure out like, oh, this leather here meets up with the leather on the back and there's a little knot here that has a string down. So if we go back to, let's save, you know what we're going to do? We're going to say preferences. Quick save. We're going to crank up both those because we're just kind of messing around. This right here. So here's where this leather piece meets up with this piece, and it's got two knots and a little connector piece right here and a little string that hangs down. Hard to see in a lot of my reference. It took a little while, but you'll find little things like that pop up. And then here, you know, there's a little belt. Just trying to get an idea of where all the stuff is. The seam right here down the vest, you know, was added, and I didn't necessarily know, you know, where does the seam end up? Well, I couldn't find a back reference shot, so I just went through here and just went zoop straight back and guessed basically, and ended up there. I guess we can turn on perspective while we're just looking. Trying to think if I missed anything else. I didn't put the holster in over here. I've got some blockouts for the gun stuff, but I haven't really. Gloves. Yeah, I guess he does have gloves turned on. So yeah, looking at glove reference and trying to match that stuff. So long story short, advice on getting better is just the first time you make a character, it's going to take a long time. It's not going to look very good. But the second character you make is going to go a lot faster and look a lot better. And then the third one and the fourth one and the 10th one and the 100th one. Just keep making stuff. And you'll get better just through creating, basically. Now, as far as like maximizing your, if you want to go out and like kick a tree to make your leg stronger for, kickboxing or whatever, I don't know what the equivalent of that would be for. I think it would just be, if you want to get good at sculpting heads, sculpt 1,000 heads. You want to get good at, punching things, go punch a tree or whatever. I get most of my martial arts advice from old movies. Yes, this is the Ghoul. What advice would you give me on internship as a character artist? Internships, I really don't know. It kind of goes back to tailoring your portfolio, I suppose. So back here in the ArtStation blog, breaking into the industry, have a portfolio that is good or exceeds the artists that work there if you can. If you can't, get as close as you can for the type of work they do. That'll at least put you in the running, hopefully, ideally. Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Glad this is helping. I hope it does, because I know some of that stuff is a little bit abstract and we kind of go fast, but again, I'm trying to give you as much information as I can within the time we have together. How long does it take to build up the reference board? Does it feel heavy in your eyes when you're looking through? Yeah, it takes me a while, but not really that long. But it kind of depends on. Yes, it's a setup task, and it's not a very sexy setup task, but at the end of the day, if I spend a couple of hours going through and capturing and adjusting and organizing, but then when I start modeling, it saves me exponential time, because I'm not having to go through and be like, oh, I've been modeling from this one view where the thing looked like this, but then I find out later, if I had just had that reference, I wouldn't have, number one, modeled the wrong thing for a day. And number two, I could have dialed it in even faster. So yes, it takes a couple hours up front, but it pays off in dividends later on. Why Miro and not Pure? I put everything in Miro. All my notes, if I'm taking notes or I'm linking to videos or anything like that, and also I can just go through here and just click and download. And honestly, if I'm also overlaying anything, I'm using Quadro, so I just use Quadro and Miro. If you want to know more about Miro, I do have a whole section in my... But I'm not saying you should do what I do. Do whatever the hell you want. I truly couldn't care less. Could I care less? No, I couldn't care less. But here's the Miro thing if you want to check that out. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm in Miro a lot, so I just put stuff in Miro. Never used it. I use PureRef a little bit. If someone sends me a PureRef file, I'll open it up and I'll look through it and be like, cool. And then I'll close it and not really use it myself. But again, your mileage may vary for sure. Okay, so let's start breaking this old boy down. So here is the base model. I went through and I did a spread finger pose from Character Creator over to ZBrush, because I'm going to be doing gloves. I do like a relaxed pose more than like an A pose or a T pose, obviously. But the relaxed finger pose was not conducive to having a bunch of, baking and getting wrinkles into these areas. So I went through and did a spread pose and then I sent that over. You'll also notice this isn't very high res. I basically capped it out at subdivision level 4. Just because I just need him sitting there, and if I need to like put a shirt or a vest and use this geometry, I don't need all 6 subdivision levels. I'll just have subdivision level 4 sitting in here as a kind of a placeholder, and I'll have another file that has the full resolution body that I can bring in later if I want to, or append these objects to that. Oops, let's go back to V1. So if I'm going to start with something, basically I'll just go ahead and export this out. Again, if you want to know more about the Marvelous Designer process, I just sent out a link to that, but you can also go to my YouTube channel and type in Marvelous, and that will walk you through, bringing in the Marvelous avatar, Appending your body, exporting out a decimated version. Again, on my channel, I might go into Marvelous and show you exactly like what buttons to push, but basically constructing a shirt and a pants using their templates. Even the trench coat was a template. The lapel didn't work great because it was like a real trench coat, whereas this lapel was a little bit different. It kind of, so the goes around here and then it just kind of goes straight. It doesn't fold over or anything like a tuxedo or something like that. It's just a big straight piece of folded cloth, kind of. So that I had to go through and change. But other than that, Marvelous Designer for the big shirt reads, and then going through here and cleaning this up, basically. So you know what? Let's do this. Let's do all low so we don't get caught up in details just yet. So that's basically how I block that out. For the hat, I actually had to bring in, just to kind of keep myself honest, so I'm going to make a hat, right? So I'm going to switch to my Ghoul hat, and I've got my reference dialed in. So if I hit Shift-Z, let's see, turn this up a little bit here. I wanted to make sure this hat kind of look like the hat that he actually used and not just a generic hat. So I went through and did the exact same thing. So let's talk about hat blockouts. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. It can be a cylinder, edit, make polymesh 3D, scale it down. And if I want this to kind of be a little bit easier to use, what I might do is go in here to polygroups, group by normals. So polygroups, group by, where is it? This is why I use my custom menu. Group by normals, right there. That's going to give me a polygroup on the top, side, and bottom. I'm going to hit tap X to go into X Symmetry. I can say ZRemesh same, adapt the size down to 0, keep groups, smooth groups down to 0. That'll give me new geometry. That's a little bit easier to sculpt on and will behave a little bit. Forgot I had this turned on. What's the word I'm looking for? Behave predictably. In fact, I don't even need thickness. I'm going to hold down Control Shift and tap this top one, Geometry, Modify Topology, Delete Hidden. I'm going to put on some fake thickness. So geometry, you know what? Let's skip that. Let's talk about this first, and then I'll show you about fake thickness. So we've got our brim of our hat, and then on the brim of our hat, let me walk you through exactly how I made this. Body, brim, brim here. That's about right, right? So if I go in here and I say, okay, where does this brim need to sit? We go through here and we just kind of dial in where the brim doesn't need to be perfect, but just somewhere on here. Now I notice, hey, the top of his head kind of looks like where his hat would go anyway. Well, then just steal it. We'll duplicate this out. We'll hold down Control Shift. Let's turn off perspective. We'll use our knife curve. We'll go across here. We'll say delete higher. There we go. So now we've got this portion of the hat and we've got this portion of the hat. So for this portion, let's go ahead and hide the body. We can go through here. I'm going to hold down Alt and tap this point. So now as I go through here, I'm like, okay, this needs to be higher. Also, we can turn on X to go into X Symmetry, Geometry, Modify Topology, Mirror and Weld across the X axis. And when I say Geometry, Modify Topology, I literally mean Geometry menu, Modify Topology menu, Mirror and Weld across the X axis. X Symmetry is turned on. That's just basically going to make it so that it's the exact same on both sides. So then we go through here and we'll say Z, move this down, and I'll be like, okay, this shape needs to kind of look like this. And I know from experience that on the top here, it's going to be a little wider. Let's turn off perspective. So we'll set this in the middle and we'll scale it out. And then also it's going to be kind of sculpted in the middle. So I'm going to hit, you know what? Let's hit Control D. We'll start sculpting in a little bit of detail. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of going through here and modifying this hat. And you might be saying, well, wait, this hat should be connected to this thing. Absolutely. We can connect it at any point. We're just blocking in. In fact, if we want to do that now, we can. And you might be thinking, well, wait, don't we need a hole in here? Should we Boolean that out? No, we have a volume for the top. And we have a volume for the side. And in fact, it doesn't even have to be, you know, super thin or match that. Basically what I'm looking for is the overall volume. So I'm going to say, I don't even know where these are in my subtool stack. I don't feel like looking for them. Shift, bent down arrow, Alt tap, Shift, bent down arrow. They're both at the bottom here. Use my hotkey for merge down. These are now merged together. W, this button right here, this little gear icon, remesh by union. That will union this mesh. Again, geometry modified topology, mirror and weld across the X. I have my entire hat. In fact, I can say Control Shift, grab the pink, grab the red, geometry modified topology, delete hidden, ZRemesh half, depth size down to 0, keep groups, boom. We have a hat block out. Well, what about the thickness? Do you want to go through here right now and say, you know, extrude? Now, I wouldn't use two things. I wouldn't use QMesh polygroup all. Whenever you use QMesh, it wants to stick polygons together. Not really what I'm looking for. So ZModeler brush, BZM, hover over a face, extrude polygroup all. We can pull down thickness, and then display properties, flip. So we can flip that around. And now we have, well, we have some flip geometry, but I'm not quite there yet. So instead of putting in actual modeled thickness, what I'm going to do instead is put in some preview thickness. So geometry dynamic. If you turn on dynamic, that's just going to run a smooth subdiv. Turn that down to 0 and then crank this thickness up. This is going to put thickness in the middle. So it's going to kind of inflate a little bit, and that's not really what I want. So I'm going to go in here to offset, and I want to keep my outside polygons, my actual modeling polygons. And then when I turn dynamic on, it's going to add some dynamic thickness. That's going to be the thickness of my hat. And if I don't want that, I can just turn dynamic off. So now I can go through here and be like, okay, first let's see what the hell is going on with this geometry. Because sometimes ZRemesher will look at something and make some weird decisions. So I'm just going to go through here and be like, okay, that looks okay. I'm going to turn on X symmetry because this is a fairly symmetrical hat. I'm going to say ZRemesh half again. There we go. We got a nice block out. Maybe you want to go half again. Maybe you want to go half again. I don't know how low you want to go, but this is looking fine. So now if I turn on dynamic, it'll give you my fake thickness back if I want. I can go back here to subdivision level. Oops, we still have X symmetry turned on. We have our move brush here. So we can go through here, and I'm going to move in this angle. This scoops down. This flips up. And again, I'm not dealing with thickness. It's all fake thickness. I can smooth things out, and I can add the thickness later. But essentially, this is about what a hat's going to look like. I'll switch over here to this view here, and I'll, you know, maybe I'll do an entire scale in a little bit here, and we'll. Again, this is one of those views where I'm like, I'm not going to necessarily put a whole. I couldn't quite line up exactly what I wanted in here, so maybe I'll skip most of that, and I'll go through here. I mean, we got pretty close, even just kind of messing around. Just being like, hey, this is essentially the hat, right? Started from his skull, and then we put in his hat, and then once you get it to a certain point, that's when you start going like, oh, okay, yeah, this looks kind of busted, right? So go through here and look at your reference and make good decisions. If you want to smooth this out a little bit, you can go in here to just polish by feature, deformation polish by feature, and just tap that a few times, and that'll go through and kind of smooth out the volumes a little bit. If you really want to smooth things out, change your polish. I'll show you where that is. Deformation, polish by feature. If you do open circle and tap, it'll really smooth out your model. If you do closed circle, that's going to maintain your volumes. And that won't smooth as much, but at least it'll maintain your volumes. It won't melt your object. And then just go through here and just move stuff around. If you're happy with this thickness and you're like, you know what, I'm ready to commit, go down here and say apply. Now if you hit dynamic again, it's going to add more thickness. We don't want that, so turn thickness down to 0. And at this point, maybe you do want to use smooth. Then maybe you do want to go in here to like crease PG, and then maybe you do want to go in here and say, you know, it's crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3, and now we have a smooth preview of our hat. And then if you want to put a little band around the hat, you could go in here and say like, okay, BI, brush insert, curve, and maybe make one of these curves here. You can even hold down shift, start drawing your curve and hold down shift, and it'll snap to a polygroup here, although we may need to, let's see. I think we may need to look at this curve functions. Yeah, polygroup. Huh. Doesn't want to cooperate. But another thing you can do is you can hold down, you can duplicate this off. You can say Control Shift, tap just this port here, geometry modify topology, delete hidden, you can go in here to stroke, frame your open border, and then you can just tap on here, and that'll go ahead and write. Now, if you have X symmetry turned on, it's going to double up your IMM brush. So tap X to turn X symmetry off, and there you go. Now, if I'm just doing a strap, I'm not going to go in here and say BC brush curve. There's like a curve flat or flat snap, or I don't need to do any of this. All I need to do is, let's go ahead and delete this out of here. I have a hat. This hat has volumes, and this strap is going to fit this hat. So I can duplicate the entire hat off, and then I can say the strap's going to cut across here. So I can say two things I can do. I can go to my ZModeler brush, for instance, and I can say polygroup, polyloop. I'm going to grab these two, delete hidden. Boom, I have a strap. Or if the strap doesn't necessarily match the geometry all that well, I can say, you know, it's actually a fatter strap and maybe it cuts across here, then go ahead and slice it. And then isolate just the purple one here, delete hidden, half, smooth. There you go. There's your strap. It's kind of bending in a little bit. That's okay. Just go in here, insert single edge loop, get rid of these, and then you can add them back. Insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup, and just doop, doop. There you go. Now it's all flat. And then you can go through here. You can extrude. You can add a dynamic thickness. You can say crease PG, crease level of 2, smooth set of 3, or whatever. And there you go. You have a strap that you can use based on the pre-existing geometry that you already have, rather than trying to wrangle IMM curves and stuff like that. So, hat makes sense. And that's how I made the hat is exactly how I made pretty much everything else. You start with a volume, a shape, you Boolean something together, or you Dynamesh something together, you get the overall volume. Once that's kind of dialed in, you maybe use ZRemesh it so it's a little bit more predictable, and then you sculpt the final. That's the long and short of it. For this character I do, well, for Cooper I do. So again, on my YouTube channel here, if we go home, we have the Cooper video, and then after this, we'll have the Ghoul video, and then I might go through the character creator, Marvelous, Substance Painter stuff eventually on my channel. But for the ZBrush channel, we'll stick with ZBrush. And again, like the hat too, same thing with this. You know, this looks maybe fairly complex, where it's like, oh man, you know, what is this weird shape? How did you make it? All it is looking at the reference and starting with a cube, and you can Dynamesh that cube if you want, and you go through there and you put that cube in this shape here, and you cut a little bit out here, and then you ZRemesh it, and then you're kind of done, you know. And then you extrude some faces on it, and then you sculpt it on it a little bit, and all it is just a basic volume that you modify and then ZRemesh. Or you don't have to ZRemesh, you can hand rebuild. But yeah, spoiler alert, that's how it's the same thing with the boots here. So let's talk about boots. I'm going to go really fast through this because I do have better resources for this. For example, if we go in here and we look at, scroll way down, there's a boot tutorial in here. It's 18 videos and or this little paper breakdown. Also on my YouTube channel, if we just type in shoe or boot, there's a whole bunch of live streams about how to create shoes and boots. But you start with, where does the boot go on? It goes on the body. So I'm going to duplicate this body off, hold down shift, shoot it down to the bottom so I know where it is, isolate the body. I couldn't find any exact examples of the top of his boot, but I can, you know, look at other versions of a boot and go, you know what? You know, and in fact, maybe I don't want to start at subdivision level 1. Maybe I want to start at subdivision level 3. That's fine. Go through here and say, okay, the boot's going to go right about here, and let's immediately just go in here and just say Dynamesh a little higher than that. There we go. For the bottom of the feet, I'm going to go in here to H polish brush. We're going to turn on backface masking. So brush auto masking, backface masking on. Let me have some coffee. And we kind of went over this in the Cooper one too, because we made shoes in there, but essentially, and in fact, I'm just going to do 1. I don't need to do 2, so just grab 1 here, delete hidden, and we can always mirror it over later. Go through here with our H-polish brush and just kind of make a little flat section here, re-Dynamesh. We can also knife the bottom of the foot out, and then W, control tap, control drag out. And if you get little stragglers, you can control shift drag over a little section, control shift A, which is visibility, grow all, geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, control drag to Dynamesh. And now you have the basis of your boot. And then you can go in here with your clay buildup, you can go in here with your move brush and say, okay, boots, they tend to like peak in the middle and then they kind of swoop through here. This is, if you want to, you can also grab reference. It's kind of flatter over here on this side, and then maybe go in here and polish this a little bit, or smooth, or inflate, deformation, inflate. You can inflate it up a little bit around the foot. And in fact, if we turn everything back on, I'm going to Alt tap the body, shoot that down to the bottom here, so I can have the body sitting here while I'm messing around with the boot. And then we're using reference, and we're using our brains and everything in between, reference and our brains, to go through here and kind of block in a boot. Now, eventually I'm going to get to the point where, let me just load up boot. Shoes. These are pretty good views, right? And the spurs and everything. So something like this. I've got this open here, so I'm kind of making judgments on, okay, this is just primary forms, but you know, it's going to kind of come up here. We're using our damn standard brush. It's kind of come to a point here. I'm going to turn on transparency, make sure his foot is reasonably within this boot here. And then also, you're going to notice that on boots, kind of tilts up here. And then let's also raise this resolution up just a little bit more. Also something like this. Clip. You know, you got a little heel here, and then we can go through. Now, if you do want to move this heel around and you want it to bring the other side along with it, number one, make sure before you cut the heel that you're, you know, looking. If you want to look straight back, you want to carve straight back through, you're kind of looking at an angle like this, you can go straight through. But if you're not, you can also go through here and again, just kind of move this primary volume around. Control drag to re-Dynamesh, go through here with your H-polish brush and polish this back, hold down Alt to polish out, etc., etc. And again, you're just kind of dialing in your primary and secondary forms, and in fact, this is going to cut way up on his heel probably. You don't have to go into a ton of detail, or you can go through and do all the detail in the world. It's kind of up to you. I really don't remember what this shoe looked like, so what I can do actually is I can say, give me, sorry, I got this all over the place. And again, if I want to know where something is, I can put it in a folder, but probably what I'm more likely to do is just shoot everything down to the bottom for now. And we got our block out here too, which is at the bottom. Here, this piece here. Yeah, and then if we say all high, this is kind of where I ended. Again, there's nothing here. There is not a whole lot here, but so if I want to, I can say, you know what, this is generally what those boots will look like. Okay, so Shift S stores this. If you want to, you can hit Control N to clear those off. So Shift S to store a screenshot here, just to kind of make sure I have something I can look at a little bit easier, and then we'll go back to our block out here. There we go. So you got your boot, you're going through here, and you're dialing in where your volumes need to be, where your lines need to be, and then just like the Cooper suit that we made, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to start splitting things off. So this is where things get tedious, but also the overall shape too is going to be like down here. So we're going to use our Move Acu brush. And again, I don't really care about this inside piece here. In fact, we'll hit Control W to make this all in polygroup, because I know eventually this is just going to get filled in, right? All I really care about is this volume here, because I can go through, and again, we're moving fast, so you know, dial in your volumes nicely. But at the end of the day, if you're just looking for, here is my volume for my boot, I'm going to get the top, And then I'm going to go down here. This is gross. Hold on just a second. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Here, you, and you. In fact, yeah, let's say all these. I'm going to do a quick merge visible, append, here, solo, isolate, delete hidden, resolution, Dynamesh. And a little lower resolution because this is a block in. Hey, look, everybody, it's my block out. Isn't it really good? And I probably don't have a seam line here. But essentially, this would be my block out. And now I want to do my final boot, right? Well, I do have, if I have some decent detail in this boot, which I probably, honestly, I don't. I usually save my decent details for final. But let's say if there was some decent details I wanted to keep or project back to, just remember, hold down Control and tap the latest point in history. That'll store those vert positions. We can morph or we can project back to this detail. Now, I'm not a huge fan of going to final on Dynamesh. This is just for blockout purposes for me. Your mileage may vary. Maybe you go to final on Dynamesh. Don't really care. Do what you want to do. But I'm going to go through here and I'm going to say, now I'm going to go to final. And not only am I going to go to final, I'm going to go to final in pieces. So I'm basically going to go through and we're going to mask out where the boot primary volume needs to be. And then the heel I can actually ZModeler based on what my bottom of my foot ends up looking like. So we're going to go ahead and skip that for now. We don't have to do a whole bunch of sculpting for the rubber parts. Basically what I'm saying is we can use ZModeler for the heavy lifting on that. For the sculpting, for the main boot primary volume, maybe not so much. So now I'm going to go down here to my masking menu. This is a 2023 or 2024 edition, so if you don't have that, you won't have it. But we can say Analyze Region. We can fill in here. We can say Fill Region. Again, Control-Tap to blur the mask, Control-Alt-Tap to sharpen it up. Go through here, do a little bit of a cleanup pass if you want to. Control-W will give you a polygroup. It's going to be a little aliased, but one thing we can do is we can go in here to, again, masking, and we can say mask by our polygroup border, group border, so groups. I like to do like maybe a grow mask once, Control tap to invert that, and then deformation, polish by feature, maybe an open circle, just tap that a few times. That'll go through and smooth out that line. So now, again, I Control tap those points in history to store all my details. So I'm going to Control Shift tap, Geometry Modify Topology, delete hidden, ZRemesh half. Depth size pretty low, maybe even down to 0 to get nice even quads. I don't have any groups on here, but if I did, if I'm like, you know what, I do want to put a seam line right here, and I want ZRemesher to keep that seam line, just go in here and say, let's do it where you all will be. ZRemesher half. You don't have to do half, but I'm going to drop down to like 30K. It's no big deal. If you don't want to do half, you can just drop this number down. We want to keep groups, smooth groups. It's already smooth. We've already either smoothed it out around here or we sliced. So smooth groups we can put down to 0. Depth size down to 0 for nice even quads. The higher this is, the more it's going to want to build in more geometry around tight curves. I think 0 is probably fine. We'll hit ZRemesher. So we have our sculpted proxy geometry detail, and then we're going to get new geometry that we can go to final with. One problem, this detail right here, I don't really need. I can add that in later. So in fact, what I might do, I'm going to say, sorry to put you on a wild tangent here, but I'm actually going to duplicate this working geometry off. I'm going to go back to my boot. I'm going to go back to the high-res source here, and I'm actually going to duplicate this off so I can go back to it. I'm going to smooth this out because I'm going to have a whole boot underneath this piece, and then on top of this whole boot, I'm going to have another piece of extruded leather sitting on top of it, basically. If you didn't want to do this, and you're like, actually, I want this piece to be cut out, you could just leave it. But I'm basically going to use this boot here for my underlying boot, and then I'm going to go through and slice and ZRemesh this piece that I want to have extruded off of my original geometry. So here. So here's my new geometry. Let's go through here. I'm going to do a project history to project to those points I just stored. And then again, I can go ZRemesh half. Now, sometimes when I do keep groups, and then you look at your groups, there might be like little weird, you know, points that are kind of mushed together. You have to go through here and smooth it out, or, you know, you'll have something that looks like this, you know, and you zoom in and there's like a point. It just really wants to build that in for some reason. Just go through here and just collapse edges, or geometry modified topology, weld points, you know, and move that distance up. Basically clean up any weirdo issues you may be having. We're actually in good position. We're in good shape. So we'll say ZRemesh half. And while I'm going down half, it is averaging these verts a little bit. So I'll do a quick project history to get those verts back out to my original high res. ZRemesh half, project history, ZRemesh half. Okay, that's pretty decent. So now I want to get my details back. And in fact, maybe I want to cap this, tops and bottoms and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll go through here, close convex hole. Let's do close concave hole. That's going to fill in the bottom and fill in the top. Let's go ahead and say do another ZRemesh to get decent geometry, both of those. And then for this top one here, if I do want to swap this one out, I can say delete hidden and then close. Maybe I want to do a closed convex hole on here. Control W to make that a polygroup. Inset polygroup all legacy. Maybe we'll pull in a little bit, and then we can get rid of this one here, and we want to keep that for a seam later maybe, and we got the bottom here. Okay, so we're in good shape. So we're going to say project history. Actually, we're going to take just these two polygroups, and we're going to say project history, and then we're going to hit crease PG, which is under your geometry crease menu. We're going to hit Control D to subdivide, and then again we're going to grab these two, project history, Control D to subdivide, grab these two, project history, Control D to subdivide, grab these two, project history. So we started with just a crappy volume. We went through and we ZRemesh. We got our details back, not a ton, but whatever details you had. And now I have subdivision history. I can go through. I can be okay. Let me sculpt in some compression wrinkles on here, and I can even go in here with like my pinch brush. We can go in here to our elasticity. We can crank our simulation iterations up. We can go through here and we can kind of use that to kind of dial in some wrinkles too. And basically just finish this out. If I want to do some ZModeler stuff, I'll say duplicate this off. I'm going to say subdivision level 1, delete higher, Control Shift tap the orange, delete hidden, extrude polygroup all with my ZModeler brush. This will give me that initial depth here, and we can also hold down Shift to kind of pull and just change that thickness here. So let's kind of match this here a little bit if we can. Turn on transparency with Ghost so you can sculpt and model through an object here. And in fact, this might be a good candidate too for a move brush with backface masking on. So you can go through there. You can leave the top alone, and then you can go through here and you can add a little bit of thickness on some of these areas if you want to. And then we can say here, this alt painting these polygons here, and then we'll say extrude. And if we want to flatten this out, let's isolate this. We're going to say auto groups, and then W, Control tap that point in history. You can Z scale back, flatten that out, pull this down, rotate it, whatever you want to do, to make this heal. So now we've got this is all matched up nicely with the boot. In fact, if we want to, we could even say extrude polygroup all, just hold down Shift. Let's make these different polygroups. There we go. So now I can actually go through and make this wider, just pulling along the surface normal of those polygroups here. And again, it's going to be basically this heel back here that needs to have a little bit of something like this. And then again, you can go in here and say, oh, we can do more geometry in here, no problem. Insert, multiple edge loops, keep polygroup. Let's do uncrease all, and then just do a crease PG. That'll crease all my polygroups here. We can say crease level of, crease level of 2, smooth subdiv of 3. And now we've got the rubber section of our boot, so that now boots main. That's just Dynamesh. We'll end up with something like this. And in fact, when I was making this, I did go through and slice in a polygroup for this, so it would be easier just to extrude this out. So really all I needed to do was duplicate this off, subdivision level 1, and you can see I can even go in here and say polygroup, fill, stop at creased edges, so I can go through here and just tap. Oops. There we go. Delete hidden. Oops, delete higher. Delete hidden. Isolate, Control Shift Tap. Split hidden. That's under your Subtool split menu. We'll say Q mesh polygroup all or extrude polygroup all. We'll just add some thickness in here. I'd still might even go in here and do a quick group by normals just to get normals on all different sides of this mesh. And then we can say, you know, crease level of 1, smooth sieve of 2 or 3, crease PG. And now we've got this leather overlay piece that you can go through. And now this isn't real geometry. If I'm trying sculpting on this, it'll let me, but then if I turn off dynamic, you're going to see, oh, all I'm really doing is modifying this very low res geo. So if you like the preview and it's looking good and it's treating you right, go in here to dynamic apply, and you can go through and you can just add. Now you have real geometry. You can go up and down subdivisions. And again, add your compression wrinkles, tension folds, all that good stuff, and eventually have some sort of a boot dialed in. Like so. And again, not a fancy boot at all. Let me take his pants off here. Yeah, I guess we do got some spurs here. And in fact, that's a bit weird. Because I also, oh, there we go. There's our buckle. So we'll say, there you go. That's a good look. Real cowboy. So, yeah. And then same thing with like these straps on here too. If I have a volume available to me, and it's like, okay, I want to put a strap across this boot. You could go in here to BTO topology brush. You're gonna have to find a subtool with no subdivision history, but you can go through here and you can literally just kind of, oops. If you have stored history, it's going to want to snap to that stored history. So I'm going to control tap my point in history and then control tap it again to get rid of any stored history. And now I can go through here and it should stick. Okay, yeah, it'll stick. So you can go through here and you can just make a, make a strap. You can tap off to give it thickness, say split mask points. Go through here and, you know, use your Q mesh brush to go through and add thickness and hit D for dynamic and crease level of 2 and smooth sieve of 3 and go through and model your straps. Let's say Q mesh, control out a copy of this here. And then we can say like delete single poly here and here, and then bridge 2 holes, U to U, and fold this over, and then control shift. Let's switch over to our select lasso. We'll go through here and we'll say auto groups, control W, and then we hit D for dynamic, and then again crease PG. Now we've got, you know, our little strap that's doing basically whatever we want based on the underlying volumes. If you're doing anything more complex than that, I still might go through here and say, okay, give me my boot, spurs, buckle, boots, main. There you go. Give me my boot. Go in here and do a merge visible. I'm going to append those back to my subtool stack. And then on this merged result, go into solo mode. Geometry modify topology, delete hidden. I'm going to go through here, just Dynamesh this, because again, I'm just looking for the volume. And then I'm going to go through here and say, okay, specifically, I want a strap that goes wide, wide to thin, like so. Instead of hitting Control W and making a poly, actually, shoot, hit Control W to make this all one poly group so it's a little bit nicer when we get to this part here. So we've got, again, we want a wide, we want it to kind of go from wide to thin, maybe, because sometimes leather does that. And again, instead of hitting Control W and having to clean this up, sometimes you can go in here to edge loop and say edge loop mask border. That'll slice through a mask, and then Control Shift Tap, delete hidden, ZRemesh half, tap size down to 0. ZRemesh. If you want to smooth it out a little bit, again, polish by features a few times, maybe open circle once. ZRemesh. Here's ZRemesh. There we go. QMesh. Poly group all, so maybe we'll pull this out. If we do want, for example, if I go in here and say crease PG, crease level of 2, smooth sub of 3, we got a nice fall off, and it's like, okay, I want to add a little more detail to this. You could do this. You could do Shift D, go in here and say QMesh poly group all. You can add a little lip, pull a little lip out. Again, crease PG, hit D for dynamic, and now you've got a little built-in lip. What I tend to do sometimes is I'll say, okay, geometry, this is just fake, right? We have D for dynamic turned on. So I'm going to go through here and we're going to say geometry, dynamic subdivision is just dynamic apply. So now it's real geometry. I'll hit Control D one more time. And now I want to add a little inset or a little bit of leather working look. So Control Shift Tap, switch back to select rectangle, Control Shift Tap this polygroup, Control Shift X to expand, let's say about that thick, maybe a little thinner. Control Tap to mask those visible polygons, Control Shift Tap to bring everything else back, and now I have that all masked out. So I'm going to Control Tap to invert that mask. Maybe I'll go in here to deformation, run a polish just to kind of polish that edge out if I want to. Maybe also go into deformation, inflate. Crap. Maybe inflate to like 0.5 or 0.2 or whatever. Because again, this is just going to be a sculpted solution, not necessarily a modeled solution. Undo that. Maybe I'll go back in here and do a polish by feature close circle just to kind of take the edge off a little bit here and then go through. So a little bit of detail and then a little bit of sculpted detail. I'm probably going to drop down to subdivision level 4 or 3 to get my primary folds in here, and then maybe follow back up with alphas or something like that to dial in like super high frequency detail folds and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how that was all made. So you get the idea of starting with a volume, ZRemeshing it, and then just taking it to final. Some of the other stuff like ZModeler stuff might be a little, I'm trying to, like the bullets are a little bit more ZModeler-y, I suppose, but even those are still something like start with a primitive. So we'll say, give me a cylinder, F to frame. This is too many. I'm going to go down here to initialize. I'm going to say, you know what, I don't need 32. I made maybe 24, 16. V-divides, I can say 4, which is actually just what you see here. We'll say, make polymesh 3D. I'm going to hold down Alt, and we'll ZModeler this back. So basically, if we can do a uniform scale, or we can hold down Alt and scale along the other two axes to kind of thin something out. And this will be the start of my bullet. For the back here, we'll do a quick group by normals. And in fact, I don't even know what these bullets look like. You see, solo mode, F to frame. I'm just going to have these kind of sitting here. And again, these are all taken from bandolier reference. Kind of going through here and being like, okay, here's the back, here's the fronts. Some of these I could tell pretty nicely what they were. Some of them I had to do a little bit of guesswork, educated guess, but you can kind of see the reference I'm pulling from. And then if we go back down here, again, that was Shift S. So for example, this one here. So first I'm going to have a bullet where I go through and do like QMesh polygroup all here, and then QMesh this out, and then we'll maybe like inset polygroup island legacy. We'll pull this back in. We'll pull this back in. We'll say inset. We'll do another inset here, and we'll say QMesh. Hold down Shift and kind of pull this back, and in fact, we'll switch this over to Polygroup Island. So you hold down Shift and pull this back. Again, a crease PG, add in all the control loops that you want, maybe do like another inset here. And I'll usually follow up with a group by normals just to kind of clean up my polygroups a little bit. So now when I hit D for dynamic, and we'll say, you know, crease level of 2, smooth so div of 3, just to get a preview. You know, and I can slide these things around if I want. In fact, instead of going through here and doing something like, you know, QMesh, Polygroup Island, and then holding down Shift to pull along, now you know the trick of grabbing, so Control Alt to unmask these points, go to Unmask Mesh Center, let's mask this off, and now we can say hold down Alt and just scale along that axis, and that'll go through and scale all of that detail at once. And again, you can bring in your reference and then go and match, you know, your bandolier reference or whatever, and then you can just scale this to match your photo reference. Now, I use the back end of this bullet casing for all of these, and then just modified this. So for this front one right here, for example, I'm just going to duplicate this off, Control Shift tap this front piece, delete hidden. I'm going to come out a little bit, so QMesh Polygroup Island will pull out a little, and then I'm going to say Control Shift tap this front part here. We're going to say close convex hole. We're going to pull out and then round off that tip like so, and we'll say Control W to make that all one polygroup, and then it's got a little sunken area right here, right? So here we'll say delete hidden, and that's not like, it's like, wow, it's a little bit more inside than that, you know. Insert a single edge loop, put that exactly where it needs to go, maybe here-ish, and then we'll say get rid of those. Now the problem is if I go through here and say close convex hole, it's only going to want to bend outwards. So if you had like a kind of a nipple looking thing, you could do that, but it's got to invert, right? So we're going to go down here to display properties, and we're going to say flip, and their normals are going to be flipped. And now when we go through and close this, we can invert that. Control W. We'll go ahead and keep our polygroups. We'll say crease PG. We'll go ahead and flip those back. D for dynamic, crease level 2, smooth so div of 3, and now we've got, you know, that version. For this version, you can probably guess it's just extruding out a mid-edge. How will we do these all real quick? Delete that, duplicate, put another end on this one, and then this one it's even easier. We can just say hover over a point. We can transpose a point. That will unmask just that point. We can pull that out. We can go back in here and say close convex hole, just cap it. You know, I like to put a few either control loops in here with insert, or if you want insert multiple, keep polygroup, you can go through here and put in like, you know, concentric inset, polygroup island, legacy, maybe put a control loop in here. Uncrease all, crease PG, dynamic. There we go. So now we've got that one. And varying degrees of bullet modeling. Okay, going back to the comments here. Royalty-free alpha textures and ZBrush brushes. Gumroad and ArtStation is where I think I get most of mine, and it really, I don't really do production work that I sell. I just kind of do fun things. Let me see, brush that I kind of mess around with for live streams, but I want to say you can look at the licenses, the Gumroad licenses and the ArtStation licenses to make sure that, like, oh, am I doing this for an enterprise license or a single user license or whatever, you know, pick the right license for you. But you know, we can talk about, I guess, that belt buckle as far as dialing in detail as well. So if I want to make a belt buckle, we'll start with, hell, I don't know, cylinder maybe. Make Polymesh 3D. And again, you don't even have to initialize. It can be this cylinder 3D, make Polymesh 3D, and we can get rid of these loops. I'll show you how. So here's our basic belt buckle shape, and we'll scale this down. One neat trick is you can go in here to geometry, edge loop, and you can say delete loops, and sometimes, depending on the settings, it'll go through and delete those extraneous loops. But usually what I'll end up doing, because this is not sculptable, I'll just go through here and do a group by normals. We'll have X symmetry turned on. And in fact, this is our belt buckle. There we go. And then I'll even say, you know, same, it size down to 0, keep group, smooth groups down to 0, and just give myself a new surface to sculpt on. Now, speaking of, if I go through here and we'll say, you know, QMesh, polygroup island, and we'll pop this out. I like to do an inset here. Alt tap to give me a new polygroup, and then QMesh this out here. And then we'll say a crease PG, and then we'll hit D for dynamic, crease level of 2, smooth selective of 3. And we've got kind of a thing going here. Now, I am going to say dynamic apply, so we can go through and we can sculpt on this. And then for whatever the main shape is, I'll go through here and maybe start sculpting. Let's hit Control D to start sculpting on something like here. And now let's say, okay, I want to put a little detail on the back, a little scrolly, scripty detail. Number one, I need to have that those areas masked out. Fortunately, I have most of this masked out. Unfortunately, I don't have this O masked out, but fortunately, it's pretty easy. I can mask in here. In my custom menu area, or my custom interface area, I do have an analyze region, and I can quickly just hit fill region. That's underneath your masking menu. Yeesh. Masking, mask region, auto, analyze, fill. We can hit Control W so we have easy access to that. Etc. So now we have this section back here that we can put details on. So I'm going to mask that here, and I'm going to blur it a little bit, and then Control Tap to invert that. If I don't want to see it, I can just turn off View Mask. It's still there. It's just not visible to me. And then I'll go in here to my brushes. You can go in and sculpt manually, like anything you want, or make your own vector displacement alphas, VDM alphas, custom alphas. All I did, just for, again, quick and dirty, is I have some ornamental alphas that I downloaded from ArtStation, I believe. And then I have two versions. I have one that's an IMM brush, and then one that's alphas. If you want to know how to convert meshes or alphas that you download into a multi-alpha selector like this, so you can see as I'm scrolling through these, or as I hit M, I can go through here and just select here, and it'll update the alphas. That will be converting alphas to multi-alpha brushes. Boom. You can check those videos out. Anyway, go through and do that. We've got this masked out. Again, we can't see it, but it is there. You know what? I'm going to leave it on there so we can see it. But basically, go through here, and we can grab some of these, and we can pull through. If that's too much, you can go through here, and you can turn your Z intensity down. Or what I like to do is I'm going to Control Tap this latest point in history. And so if I go through here, and I'm like, okay, I'm adding alphas, I'm adding details here, and I want to change the depth on all of this. Everything I've done past this point, I can go up here to Adjust Last, and I can adjust all of those. If you don't have a history point stored, so if we go back here and turn off any history points, if you drag something out, the very last thing you did, you can go through here and you can adjust last. In fact, you can go through here and you can adjust it more or less, invert it. You can also store a morph target. You can make a layer. You can do the exact same functionality. This is just a little bit faster here, and I have another version too. Brush alpha, IMM alphas. So I may go through here, and that's too much. You know, first dial in the overall intensity, you know, to something that makes a little bit of sense, and then go in here and just drop in and adjust last, and then follow up with, you know, whatever else makes sense. So boom, there's the belt buckle. And this isn't like, doesn't match that belt buckle perfectly because I couldn't really find any reference that got it close enough to where I could see it, but that's the end result. It's just something simple and generally the right size. Same thing with the gloves. That's just an extraction. You could do an extract mesh or a duplicate your mesh. I don't think I bothered, did I? Oh, I guess I did. I did go through and split these off as separate panels just to make it a little bit easier to work with. But, you know, for gloves, pick and choose your battles. Maybe that's worth it. Maybe it's not. vests, buttons, hats, boots. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Okay, we're 10 minutes over. Is the T-pose bad? I would think it would help with sculpting the armpits. It's okay. I can through Character Creator, I can go through and move the arms and fingers around as much as I want and propagate those changes over. As far as like getting cloth to deform, you definitely do want to you want to leave enough space in the crotch and the armpits in order to kind of get cloth in there and have it simulate properly and effectively for just kind of a general relaxed pose. Or I don't know, if you're going to he's going to be doing a lot of Superman stuff. You may need to do a little bit more calisthenics testing in order to get the edge loops, enough edge loops to support the shapes that you're going to want or simulate. But generally speaking, this is a nice relaxed day pose. There's plenty of room for me to go through there and bake and do what I need to do. So yeah, this is a pretty standard day pose, I think. Yeah, remesh by union is super helpful. I can't remember your workflow for cloth. You added thickness after sculpting or at lower levels? Oh, for Marvelous Designer. So that's a good point. Is that for the shirt, for example, I left it single-sided. So if I turn off double, you're going to see this is just going to get baked to a single-sided mesh. I will probably have this on a double-sided material. But to your point, sometimes what I'll do is it's a lot easier to... That's a good example. I guess this is a good example. Let's simplify it just a tiny bit, though, just to make things go a little faster. So I have a single-sided mesh, a shirt mesh, and but let's say I want to add thickness. Well, like I mentioned, if I go through here, and number one, I also have details on this mesh. So we want to store those details, project them back, right? So Control-Tap to store those points in history. Number two, I want to add thickness to this mesh. So I'm going to go down here to subdivision level 1. We're going to say delete higher. And in fact, I'm just going to grab the pink ones here, or the pink polygroup. So we have a single-sided mesh we want to add thickness to, and we do have details to our clothing. This is where there's two ways you could do it. You could go through here, and again, you don't want to do Q mesh. We're going to do extrude polygroup all. We're going to add a little bit of thickness. We're going to display properties flip. And then now if I want to get my details back, I'm going to Control-Shift-Tap the outside. We're going to say project history. Control-Shift-Tap to bring everything else back. We'll go ahead and do a crease polygroups, and then Control-D to subdivide. Control-Shift-Tap, project history. Control-D to subdivide. Control-Shift-Tap, project history, and get our details back onto our shirt. Before we do this too, here's another option for you. One thing I'll also do sometimes is Control-D 2, 3, 4 times up. I'll go down here to Morph Target, Store Morph Target, and then I'll drop back down here, and we'll say project history. We'll go back up. We'll say project history. We'll go back up. We'll say project history. And then if I have any weird bad areas, BMG is your morph brush, and then you can go in here and you could morph back to your, plain Jane subdivided mesh here. So that's one way you could do it. You could go all the way to sculpt the detail on a single-sided mesh, add thickness, project your details back to the outer core, and then your inside core will just be sitting here untouched. It just as a general thickness. Another thing you could do is you could work on, let's say, delete lower, delete hidden, reconstruct. You could also work on a single-sided mesh and then go in here and you could say, you know what, I want thickness now. So let's go in here to dynamic. We'll turn off smooth. We're going to add thickness. This is offset of 0, so it's inflating it. So I'm going to say offset of -100. So our dynamic thickness literally just goes to the inside. Also smoothness up to 100, so we can have a smooth transition around those edges. So now we have cloth with thickness, but unfortunately it's not real, it's just dynamic. Well, we know we can now go in here and say, you know what, give me dynamic thickness and apply. Problem is, we can't reconstruct our subdivision history. If you don't care about that, you're good to go. If you do care about that, you can go through here and you can say insert single edge loop. You can add a single edge loop. Now, unfortunately, you have to do it for every opening. So you got to add an edge loop here. You got to add an edge loop here. You got to go over here. You got to add an edge loop. You got to go to the bottom. Oh, the bottom's already connected. You got to go to all your openings, add an edge loop, and then you can hit reconstruct, and it'll reconstruct down. Unfortunately, it only reconstructed back once. That's it. So instead of, you know, you can't stop there. So we've added one reconstruction. Let's go back in here, and we'll say insert single edge loop, just to make so you can see it. We're going to go through here, and on either side, one. We put one down the middle already. If we put one here and here, that's two reconstructions. If we put one here, 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 and here, that's three reconstructions. So that's what you're going to want to do for every opening. As you can say, here, 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 here. And then bottom's already done. And we got one more hand over here. So that's one reconstruction. Here's two reconstructions. Here's three reconstructions. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Now we're back where we started. We have interior detail, exterior detail, our reconstructions back. So you can add thickness after the fact if you wanted to. No matter how many tutorials I see, there's still things I didn't know ZBrush could do. I've been using ZBrush a long time, and that's another thing too when I'm teaching class is here's a bunch of techniques. I'm going to give you my opinion on here's some things you can string together to come up with an elegant solution that will get you a high quality result fast. But at the same time, it's like at least once you've gone through and you know the techniques, if you're watching anybody else on YouTube or Gumroad or ArtStation or whatever, you probably won't be lost. At least you'll know what exists. And then when you're watching somebody else work, you'll be like, oh, I know what that is and I know what that is, but I never thought of putting those together like that. But at least you know, you're not totally completely lost. You're just like, oh, what an interesting, elegant solution that somebody had to use, you know. So I'm still learning stuff. I don't really watch too much stuff anymore. I'm kind of caught up in other things, but if I ever swing back around to ZBrush full-time-ish, then yeah, I enjoy watching other people tackle. And sometimes a lot of times too, it's not when you're looking at a master class, it's not so much their techniques. Their techniques are usually like, you know, I use extrude, I use extract, I use the clay brush. Wow, what mastery you have of this program, right? That's not the master class part of the master class. The master class is seeing what they do, how they do it, what they pay a lot of attention to, and what they don't pay a lot of attention to. Because when you're a student, everything's important. When you've done this a lot, you get to know where you can cut corners, where to spend your time effectively. That's the real part of the master class, rather than, oh my God, how do you extrude a face? How does this master extrude a face? The same way anybody extrudes a face. That's not the master part. The master part is rarely the technique. Sometimes it is. Sometimes there is some really interesting ways that people can come up with techniques to use that'll get you some really nice results. But a lot of times it's more being cognizant of where they're spending their time effectively rather than how they're doing every individual thing button press by button press. Remesh by union. Other channels, where can we find those? Are you talking about like other channels to YouTube? Probably is where I watch most of my stuff. How did you circle through reference shots when sculpting the hat earlier? Is that with timeline or is there a new function? That is with the RefSwitcher plugin that I installed. You can, if it's another thing too, if you want to go in through here and you want to say reference, we do talk about spotlight reference and spotlight reference for modeling, so you can check that out for using that. What was that website with high-res photos of actors? That one I don't know. Someone else called that one out. Daniel Beauchamp website doesn't sound familiar. Link of the basketball character you made. Let me see here. Okay, so this basketball character here was used in ArtStation series. So this is a training series on ZBrush. I think it's about 12 hours long. Learning series on ArtStation. So if you want an intro to ZBrush on ArtStation, there you go. You can check that out. How do we get to a point where we can do fun things too? I feel like constantly worrying about portfolio and making things that will get me hired. I have that same, at the back of my head, I still have that same worry. This isn't a really great portfolio because this is basically where I just dump all my live stream stuff. So it's not like, hey, hire me. I have some crappy live stream work on my portfolio. So it's not a great portfolio to look at in terms of getting a job. But this is where I put all my fun stuff. But as far as like when you get there, probably it's probably easier to calm down after you have the job. And then you can kind of be like, okay, I have my 9 to 5, and then I do my 9 to 5 work, and then I come home, and maybe on nights and weekends sometimes I'll sit down and do some fun that I like to do. And not that, you know, sometimes you can do stuff at work that you like to do and sometimes not, but that's probably where some of that that mental anguish maybe dissipates just a little bit, is get the job first, and then you don't have to constantly be worrying about your portfolio. Although with this industry, like we talked about at the very top, I don't know, man, this industry is kind of in flux too. So that worry, I don't know if that worry ever really goes away, or maybe I'm just paranoid, but I don't know. I wish I had a good answer for that. What I'd really love to say is that soon we'll be in a post-scarcity world where we can all do our Star Trek thing and then just focus on what we really are passionate about. But I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. How'd you make leather damage on the borders? Let me find a good. So here's leather. This is more cloth. So let's talk a little bit. Yeah, I have some brushes I can bring up here. Now I got to remember, what brushes did I use? I want to say Pablo Munoz Gomez cloth brushes. Comma key, brush, alt, drag. There we go. Cloth. This is where I compiled all those stuff. I want to say most of this is what I used while I was kind of messing around with cloth. The damage one isn't on here. ZBrush Guides. Go to ZBrushGuides.com. He's got an awesome, Pablo has an awesome cloth tutorial and also has some brushes with it. And I want to say the brush I used for the damages was one seams and stitches. I want to say it was like seam 32. So this one is one you can drag it along an edge and it'll kind of just crumple it up. If you want to see the alpha, it's just, you know, a crumpled up alpha that you can create. And then this one has a little bit of a height difference. So as you're crumpling up one side, it'll have a little drop off ledge. So if you wanted to say go here and then go here, you could make a self-contained little fabric tear. So I want to say that brush there. It's just to kind of go through there and just give yourself some open edge damage or some self-contained, you know, damage like that. As far as like using custom VDMs, if you want, so I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes who's coming after me on this channel, but VDM, there's called vector displacement alphas, vector displacement meshes, and you can Google that. They're fairly easy to make. One easy way to kind of start is just to go in here to plane, drag it out, make polymesh 3D. We need to get this down to it's just a bare component, so I'm going to reconstruct back to just a plain plane. I'm going to turn off smooth modifier. I'm going to divide this up a couple more times, and now we have a vector displacement alpha that we can go through here, and we can say clay buildup, I guess. Let's hit Control D one more time. Make a scraggly old alpha BB brush blob. Maybe blob brush a little bit. Probably looks pretty gnarly. And basically what we're doing, you can create an alpha or a vector displacement alpha. I'm going to use vector displacement. And if we want one side to drop off, this one might be better suited for an alpha, but you'd basically want to go through here and mask nicely one side, and then you could drop off the other side here. and then just add this to your vector displacement alpha. So if we go in here to BC brush chisel 3D, for example, I'm going to go through here. I'm going to say clone this brush off. These are all vectors. So as I'm scrolling through these meshes, they're updating, right? So with this mesh here, I can say create, from mesh. That's going to throw this one on the end. So as I'm cycling through here, it'll grab this one, and then we can go through here. This is just drag rect, but we can turn this to like a dot stroke, or dot stroke with, oh, I don't know. You'd have to go through there and look at the settings, but we can turn on a roll. Then lazy mouse. Tap L on your keyboard to turn lazy mouse on or off. Lazy stub, lazy radius. Yeah, I don't know, something like that. You could generate your own vector displacements and damage brushes, stuff like that. I'm not saying that's how that brush was made, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of creating a custom vector displacement alpha, and or gosh, you know what you could do? You could say, it could even just be a completely separate piece of geometry. There's not enough time to go into it, but look up custom alphas. You can create your own custom alphas from meshes, alpha creation techniques. So you can go through here and capture alphas and store them to stamps and create brushes from them and all that good stuff. So this one might be a good one for that. Okay, go back here. Oops. Alt S. There we go. Thickness caused a lot of interpenetration. It says something to leave it out and I'll extrude edge. You'll see. Yeah, that's honestly that's what I end up doing too. Also for rigging and just to get this thing to work, I'll usually just pull in an edge that goes into the body and call it a day. I don't do double-sided anymore unless I'm going to be doing stuff for 3D printing, in which case I'll add a thickness and then transfer my details and then send that back and forth. So when I pose something out, in fact, I won't even do this. I'll say delete higher. Instead of coming in an edge for rigging purposes, I'll go through here. If I'm doing 3D printing, I'm just going to close this. And to give myself a little bit of leeway, I might go in here and say insert multiple edge loops, keep polygroup, and so there's a little more geometry there, and then project my detail back to this and just cap my bottoms and my tops. So when I have a 3D print file version, everything is closed and then easy to Boolean. It's all a rich tapestry of development. How to manage layers. If I'm managing layers, it's probably for posing, and that is I will use this plugin for that. It is called, you can get this one for free, ZBrush Pose Tools. So you can store on every single, you can also do it with Transpose Master. So if you wanted to pose this, all of this, you can go in here to Z plugin, Transpose Master, T-Pose Mesh, and when it's going to merge everything down, go down to the lowest subdivision level, merge everything down, or merge everything together, and then send it over. You can also, let me see, here, this one right here, ZBrush Mesh and Real-Illusion Character Creator Workflow. You can use this for posing, or you can use Transpose Master, or you can use Transpose Master in conjunction with posing. But you can see we've sent over a T-Pose Mesh. Everything is merged together at the lowest resolution. We can go through and pose this. We can also send it back with layer turned on. So that means if I go through here, that's why it's so high, is because the head didn't have any subdivision history. So if we go through here and say, hey, I want to, have him looking up here and have his arms down at his sides or whatever. There's a pose, have layer turned on, T-pose a sub T. That's going to send my subtools back and put them in a new pose and that pose is going to have a layer associated for every single subtool. So every single subtool now is going to have a layer called something. Once it's done. And this is no different than if I was to go into Character Creator and send over a pose. There's other ways to do this. Watch the videos. But, oh my goodness. A lot of subtools. Wait for it. And I'm going to show you how to organize your layers in just a second using that plugin. Once it's all done. There we go. Whew. Okay, so we got our new pose, right? And then I can go in here to our free plugin called ZBrush Pose Tools. I'm going to refresh my pose list. That's going to go through everything, every single subtool, look at the layers, and give me a library of layers that I can go in and I can hit rename, and I can rename this to arms down or head turned, and then I'll have a pose that I can go through here and select, and as I hit that button, it'll go through there and toggle on the layer for that pose. That's how I use and organize layers. Beyond that, if you have like detail layers or wrinkle layers or something like that for your clothing, that goes beyond posing. But in that case, yeah, I don't have a good answer for organizing that kind of layer stuff. Splits and tears is just modeling. So for example, this one here, if I go down to subdivision level 1, there's my geo. So one easy kind of way to do it is well, you can go in here to your comma key, go in here to brush. Why does it keep doing that? In here is a ZModeler folder. And in fact, you can save out a custom ZModeler brush that has certain functions. One of those is ZModeler slice. So if you double click this, that's basically your ZModeler brush set up so that point is set to slice mesh, edge is set to slice mesh, and face is set to, you guessed it, slice mesh. So we can go through here, and if we want to go through and say, hey, I want this piece. I have layers. Hold on. In fact, this is a really good plugin. Z plugin clean tool utility. We can go through here and we can say, delete all our layers. And you can bake all your layers and delete all your morphs. This one you can download from Pixelogic's website. Just do Google Pixelogic downloads or ZBrush plugin Pixelogic, and it'll go through, or Max on ZBrush, whatever they're doing now. So we're going to go back here to, so first I can hold down Control Tab and store these positions. You can also freeze transformations too if you are gutsy. You can go in here and say freeze subdivision levels, drop it down to subdivision level 1, and it'll project your detail back. Sometimes it works better than others. Anybody who's used that knows sometimes it works great, sometimes not so much. So if we go back to our ZModeler slice brush, you're going to see we can go through here. If I want to take a big chunk out of this, I can just go to this point, to this edge, and then go through here and just Alt paint along here, and then just say Control Shift Tab, delete hidden. Also, you can also set up your face action to be polygroup fill stop at creased edges. So if you want to go through here and use your slice brush to go through here and kind of slice through a section, and then you can say polygroup fill, isolate, delete hidden, and then you can go through here and do a little bit of cleanup work like delete edge, you, and you. Also, going back to our ZModeler slice, you can slice here, ZModeler slice. I forgot I switched it. So we could say slice here, slice up here. What is going on here? Slice mesh edge, you to you to you. Now I've got a little chunk in here. I can fill this in, isolate it, delete hidden. That's basically all I did. Nothing fancy. And then you can unfreeze and that will go through, and all the geometry changes we've done is projecting our detail back. Again, it may work great, may not work great. If it doesn't work great, we have those positions stored in history, so we can subdivide, project, subdivide, project, subdivide, project. And there you go. To sell this a little better, I might look at reference and be like, hey, how does, when holes appear in cloth, does it just get cut out, or does it kind of stretch the fabric like this? Also maybe a little inflate brush around these, or going back to our, let's see, lazy mouse on. You know, maybe it pills up around the edge. Maybe it has some damage. Oops, that wasn't right. We were using the Seam 32 brush. Maybe you want to throw some damage on here, maybe. That got busted. Let's say brush, and let's say reset current. There we go. You know, maybe you want to damage up these edges a little bit. Yeah, world is your oyster, but that's about it. How do you import a model into a scene? Tool, import. Import keeps replacing models or deleting other. Okay, so if you're importing an FBX, tool import will work. If you want to import an OBJ, if you have something selected, if you import an OBJ, it will replace it. So in that case, go out of edit mode, hit Control N to clear your canvas, go and grab like the simple brush, and then import an OBJ, and it will import into a clean file, or select a file you don't care about and import into that. But simple brush is just a default nothing selection. So when you go in here and say tool import, it's not going to overwrite something that's already selected. Cool. Yeah, I might stream Thursday. We'll see what's going on. But again, this is just the beginning. You know, doing our ZBrush model is one thing, and then getting it all animated and then hooked up into Unreal or whatever, and then using our mocap data to drive the face, etc. All of that stuff. If you want to see it, like on my ArtStation page here, if you scroll down, you'll see a bit of that, a lot of this stuff too. So this is the next step once you have, let me scoot forward a little bit here. Yeah, once you have all this stuff modeled, that's fine. YouTube, where is that playlist? I wish I need all my promo videos in like one little section here, so it's easy to find. All my little like 2-minute, not my 1-hour videos, but like my little 2-minute video overview stuff. Anyway, you know where my stuff is: ArtStation, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. You can check that out, and you can see the face animations and all that good stuff, physics simulations, all that stuff later. Cool. Thanks everybody, and see you next time.